I'll just do it. There, no choices. This is what it's like to record with us, by the way. Welcome. You're listening to Let's Stay Together Another, the special episode of Let's Stay Together where we talk about Fruits Basket Another by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And for this special episode, we have a special guest joining us, Lum Ramayasha of the Manga Mavericks podcast.
Yay.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm excited to record another Fruits Basket podcast with you guys.
Nice.
Very good.
You'll fit in well.
Yeah.
And that's the last turn of phrase using the word another I'm going to do. I won't do another.
I don't think this is the last, but yeah, I don't know.
I get the feeling it's not going to be the last.
There might be another at some point. Our listeners might remember that we were guests on an episode of Manga Mavericks about Fruits Basket, where we discussed Fruits Basket with you, and now we're all here together to talk about another. And I'm excited.
Yeah.
Come full circle.
Yeah, we have. Lum, tell us a little bit about yourself and Manga Mavericks, so that everyone who maybe hasn't listened to that can get a feel for what's up.
Absolutely. I'm one of the hosts of the Manga Mavericks podcast mentioned before, and Manga Mavericks is a podcast where me and my co-hosts discuss manga as a medium, as an industry. You know, we recap the latest news going on in the manga industry. We do interviews with professionals working in manga localization. And, of course, we cover series that we really love, including newer series that are, like, ongoing, as well as older series that we're really fond of. Fruits Basket was one such a series, and it was great to collab with Ellen and Kayla last year on that podcast, where that was my first time, even though I'd, been a fan of Fruits Basket since, I was a kid. I had never read through the full manga before. So it was really great to get that chance to do that when we covered it on the show last year. And I really, really loved just experiencing the full story. And soon after, I also checked out another and really resonated with that as well. In addition to Manga Mavericks, I also host a few other podcasts. Manga Mavericks and Movies is a show where me and my brother talk mainly about anime movies, and that's an on and off podcast. And I also do a podcast called Lum Squad, which is a podcast dedicated to Urusei Yatsura, which is from Rumiko Takahashi, manga great, very prolific. You've probably experienced at least one of her series, most likely Inuyasha. But Urusei Yatsura was her first. My personal favorite, I think, is just a wellspring of creativity and great humor, lovable characters. And I've been enjoying going through the new manga release of the series from Viz with my co-host AC. And now we're tackling the movies since they're now available to stream on Crunchyroll. And it's been a blast. So, yeah, that's what I do. I mainly do podcasting stuff, and in my professional life I'm a freelance artist and stuff like that. So yeah.
So exciting. I've definitely heard of Inuyasha, that is for sure. / watched a lot of Inuyasha.
Yeah. Very big at the same time Fruits Basket was in the early 2000s.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, any anime fans of a certain age watched a lot of Inuyasha.
Watched a lot of Inuyasha and probably knew or watched Fruits Basket. There's probably a good crossover for sure. But yeah, if you're interested in that, the Manga Mavericks is a great podcast. I especially like the news, like the manga industry news discussions that you have, and if you're into certain series, like the longer discussions of the series overall is really great. So you should check them out. Yeah. So today we're discussing all of Fruits Basket Another in this special episode. Yay. So this discussion assumes that you've read all the volumes of Fruits Basket Another and chapter 13. So it will include spoilers, and it will also include spoilers for Fruits Basket because it'll assume that you've read Fruits Basket. I don't know why you would read another without reading Fruits Basket, but that's just my opinion. And we're going to be discussing volume by volume. So I'll give a summary of the volume, kind of chapter by chapter, and then we'll do kind of an overall discussion of the series, and then we'll answer listener questions. We have some listener questions to answer. Yay! So that is our plan for the episode. When it comes to Fruits Basket Another, the series was published online for the most part. It was published as tankobon later. But it was published online from 2015 to 2017. And I didn't realize this, but the last chapter, chapter 13, came out in 2020. So it was quite a long time between the last chapter of the last full volume and the 13th chapter. So that's interesting. And it was translated by the original translators who translated Fruits Basket.
The Nibley siblings.
Yeah. I think they're twins, the Nibley sisters.
Yeah.
Or siblings.
They're twins. Yeah.
They're twins.
Athena and Atlia Nibley. Yeah, very prolific translators.
I don't know. I thought that was a curious note after Yen Press released the translations of Fruits Basket that were done by another translator. It's just an interesting tidbit about Fruits Basket and other. Okay, so for chapter 1, we open with our heroine Sawa Mitoma's memories of her friends leaving her as a small child, and she wonders, why do I always irritate others without even realizing? I'm not trying to cause problems. At Kaibara High School, a familiar high school for us, Sawa is running late. President Makoto Takei, did I call him president? Wow, oops.
Well, he's not behaving any differently from...
Nope, you got the name right at least.
I did.
To school principal.
Motoko isn't in this for the most part, so...
No.
Principal Makoto Takei chastises her and demands to see her ID, but a dashing upperclassman named Mutsuki uses his father's influence with the principal to let it slide and asks Sawa to meet him in the student council room after class. Later, Sawa goes to the council room and steps on a familiar-looking orange-headed lad named Hajime, who's sleeping on the floor, and sasses her, and Sawa books it without even talking to Mutsuki. At home, she continues to worry about having caused trouble by stepping on someone's face, until a noise by the door distracts her. She wonders if it's her mom. She wonders how long it'll be until her mother returns this time. Next morning, Mutsuki and Hajime rescue Sawa from the landlady, and while she's distracted by Mutsuki's good looks, Hajime drags Sawa away and returns the student ID that she didn't even realize that she dropped. See, I knew she wouldn't remember, Hajime says to Mutsuki when he catches up. I told you, he says. That's just how these things go. Overwhelmed with the anxiety of having done something wrong and caused trouble, Sawa suddenly starts to cry, but Mutsuki comforts her. Sawa wants to make it up to Hajime for stepping on his face and offers to do anything. And turns out that anything in Mutsuki's world translates to becoming class representative of the student council. The announcement of the appointment draws some negative attention from Ruiko and Principal Makoto Takei, of course, but while they argue, Sawa makes a break for the council room. She finds Hajime there, awake this time, and he introduces himself and Mutsuki Soma fully, and he says that the position appointment was Mutsuki's idea. Sawa tries to back out, but Hajime brashly reminds her of her earlier promise. Though unsure of what she can do, she awkwardly yet determinedly accepts the position. Elsewhere, Mutsuki calls Shiki and tells him about what happened with Sawa. Don't worry, he says. Her life is about to get a whole lot better from now on. Yay. In chapter 1.5, we have some funny introductions to Mutsuki, Hajime, and Megumi, their teacher, who's their teacher.
Yeah. Hajime's little brother, he's grown up to be a school teacher.
Yeah, it turns out. And he promises he offers to curse anyone bothering Sawa about the student council appointment, which is nice, question mark.
Putting those psychic powers to good use.
Yeah, somebody's got to do it. And most importantly, we learned that though Hajime is a sleepy baby, he will absolutely not turn into a cat, even if you hug him.
I love how Sawa is like taken aback by the comment because, that's normally
he's just like, wait,
that
what?
doesn't happen to people.
Hajime's like, yeah, that would be the normal reaction.
She just doesn't understand the family history or anything. So,
not
there are
yet.
a lot of in-jokes between, like, the family where they refer to the curse and stuff in the past that she's kind of taken aback by. So
Same
that's
with,
so
like,
funny.
Same with Megumi, too, because he's like, I'll curse them. And she's like, sure, wait, what? So there's definitely a lot of, like, fourth wall nods to the audience. I mean, it's, like, presented as in-jokes to the other people in the family, but yeah, there's a lot of
references.
A lot of references for Furuba fans to mine.
And speaking of...
Yeah. Speaking of... in
the
chapter
next
2...
character.
Yeah, exactly. The next character to be introduced. In chapter 2, during lunchtime, Rumiko Kageyama, representative of the Soma fan club, gives some background on her mother's dignified and harmonious Rinsuki fan club.
I just love the idea that Motoko, like, probably framed the Ruki fan club that way to her daughter to hide the fact that she was just a raving fangirl, much unlike her daughter.
100%. But but Ryuko's like, we love all the Soma family, so she's not obsessed, at least not obsessed with, like, a specific person.
No.
Although Musuki and Hajime are definitely the focus of her attention, but
yeah. But she's also not romantically interested in him,
No.
like Motoko was, which is also an interesting distinction.
It's true,
She's
but
just
also
a super fangirl.
just same general attitude and approach, I think. But not so romantically.
She's a little less aggressive toward other people about it.
I don't know, she's a little bit aggressive towards Sawa, but
Yeah,
she's not like
but it's not
not
like,
like-
jealous. I mean,
yeah, it's like defensive
Yeah.
aggressive though. It's like I will I will lower myself to educate you on this so that you can assist them in the best way possible.
yeah.
Rather than like just stay away from them.
that's true. They were really mean to Toru at the beginning of the series in Furuba. Yeah. We flash back to Sawa's introduction the other day to the other student council members, including the sea of decay that used to be Mutsuki's desk. And much to the annoyance of Ruriko, Sawa asks if Hajime and Mutsuki are brothers. But at that moment, Riku Soma asks what Sawa is doing eating lunch in this class with Ruriko. And Ruriko explains that Riku is in Sawa's class, and that Mutsuki and Hajime are not relatives, but they're relatives, but not brothers, and that there are other Somas at this school. Later at the student council, Sawa continues to worry about what happened during lunch, and while holding a stack of papers, she has a twinge in her elbow and drops all the paper. The rest of the student council is quick to help pick up, especially when she explains that the paint's from an old injury. Hajime grabs her face and tells her to calm down and asks for help if she needs, and to quit apologizing for everything. Which also seems familiar. But on the way home, the events of the day nag at Sawa. She doesn't deserve help. Ever since her friends left her, she's been looking down, trying to stay out of things. And she remembers that time. Her friends suddenly rejected her for being annoying, and her mother's advice on the event. You're really not the likable type. I know, it's painful. Though every time her mom is, I was gonna say on screen. every time she's there, it like really bothers me, which is the point.
The sheer anxiety that is also drawn whenever Sawa is thinking of her mother, reflecting back on experiences with her mother, is also very visceral, I feel. I think Takaya does a great job of that.
Yeah, it always feels really claustrophobic when like the mother is involved on the page.
Yeah.
Or even like the threat of her being involved too.
Yeah.
But in the morning, Sawa realizes that Hajime and Mutsuki aren't turning her away, and that she needs to try to connect, and the chapter ends with her about to speak to Riku. In chapter 2.5, so another semi-extra, all the 0.5 chapters are kind of, there's background, but they're more fun or extra things that happened or broken up into small parts. Yeah. In 2.5, Ruriko is being annoying before the entrance ceremony, and then it's Ruriko making a racket during the entrance ceremony after Hajime's speech. And then Mutsuki recording and sending a video of the speech to the family, and then Ruriko freaking out about the Soma love in general.
This moment is just amazing. I guess, like, I'll just lay it out that I really found Murako very funny. And I thought that this moment was just hysterical. Like, because she is told, like, hey, don't, like, go overboard, like, during this entrance ceremony after Hajime gives his speech or whatever, tone it down. And she says, okay. But then her idea of that is that she, like, leads a, like, very loud bravo round of applause. Like, she gets up and yells, like, very determinedly, bravo, just so loudly, and then she gets other people to join in on it. Like, they don't know what's going on first, but just because of her enthusiasm, they also joined in. Just a mortified look on Hajime's face. It's just so priceless.
Hajime, it's later a couple times it comes up that he like won't invite his parents to anything. And so he's mortified of this. I think he's mortified of anybody finding out how popular he is at school and stuff like that. It's really great.
And Musuke sends the video to everyone in the family, like even Akito, which is funny. Also, the idea that everyone watches and will see this happen.
I bet Akito would secretly like it and be happy, but it's really funny.
Yeah.
The amount of course they all seem to care about each other a lot, but the amount of like teasing and like in jokes and stuff is really great between all the Somas.
No, it's just such nice playful ribbing between the family members. I think the fact that they can kind of make jokes at each other is just a nice way to show that, yeah, they're very close, that they feel comfortable kind of ribbing each other like that. It's a nice, evolution from like their parents' little more strained relationships in the movie series.
Yeah, especially even at the beginning, like if you look like, well, even like at the end with like, for example, like Yuki and Kyo, they had their like big fight and they kind of were able to start joking and stuff, but obviously for the most part in the series, all of their joking was kind of more sarcastic or like darker or whatever. Like it wasn't, it wasn't taken the same way for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they come from a good-natured place in the series. This generation of Soma kids.
I think if there's one thing that people who really like Fruits Basket can take away from Fruits Basket and Other, it's like the next generation is doing better and it is great.
Yeah.
So
no, everyone grew up to be pretty good parents to their children. They're grown up living pretty much happier lives than their parents' generation, which is nice to see.
So much so that they're kind of able to help somebody else who was in a similar situation.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so in chapter 3, Sawa amps herself up so much before talking to Riku that she starts to feel sick, but Riku scoops her up to take her to the nurse, and Sora stops him. After some deep breaths led by Sora, Sawa is able to ask if something is bothering Riku. He tells her about a girl in their class who was hoping to eat lunch with her, and Sawa is shocked that somebody would want to eat lunch with her. She didn't notice because of the way she distanced herself from others. She starts to cry. Sora notices and encourages her to take the jump and talk to the classmate. Hajime arrives and asks what's wrong. Riku apologizes, and Sawa starts to apologize herself, but instead thanks him for telling her about the classmate. Sora and Riku ask her to call them by their first names, and Sawa speaks to the classmate. She says that she noticed the way that Sawa's head was down during the whole entrance ceremony and wondered what was wrong. Sawa asks to have lunch with her tomorrow, and the girl excitedly agrees. And Sawa is so excited that she accidentally runs into Michi Minabe fist first in the student council room. Sawa and Michi are introduced, and Michi invites her to dinner with the Somas. I like how she's like, yeah, and then like punches Michi's bag or whatever accidentally. In chapter 3.5, Mutsuki cleans his desk. A great development. Yay. And we learned that Kakeru did marry his meat angel after all. Another great development from Fruits Basket. And according to Hajime, you don't want to be related to Mutsuki because Uncle Ayame comes with the package.
I love how everyone is on the same page that Ayame is just too much for them. They'd rather not be around him, except for Mutsuki.
Yeah, that's why he seems to love his uncle. Which is,
it's really funny.
I feel like Yuki's like, okay.
Probably. It's like, I love my uncle, and Yuki just has like a glazed over look or whatever. There's sometimes where his like dialogue boxes really remind me of Ayame. I think it was in this chapter as well, where they were talking about him.
He seems to have a lot of influence from both Ayame and Kakeru, which is funny.
That's true. He has Kakeru's sort of mischievous spirit, although he does some things that I think Yuki would have done if he wasn't kind of like in
he definitely
state that he was
in. He's more like
definitely
later
has,
series
Yuki's full-grown, asshole personality.
And caring about other people. Like, Yuki always cared about other people. He just couldn't deal with his own shit, like, basically, right? And then once he can, then he's able to kind of help other people, like Machi. But, yeah. In chapter 4, the gang arrives at a familiar-looking old house, though no longer in a familiar wood with a familiar cliff, apparently.
They note that the, mountainside has all been cleared out and developed over. And I like the note that Hajime says, good, it was dangerous anyway. So maybe he was told the story of how Toru's tent when she was living out in the woods was almost crushed by a rock slide.
By your way, your mom almost died here twice. So. Yeah, exactly. Because of these cliffs twice. So it's a good thing to clear it away. Well, yeah, her tent got crushed and then she fell. So
yeah.
The house, I think it comes up later, but the house also has the clear repair mark in the ceiling from where they repaired the leaking ceiling for where Kyo jumped in, which is pretty funny to me. Once they arrive at the house, everyone gets to work making dinner, including Sawa, with what seems like Hajime in the lead, and everyone says that he's a dad. They tease him that he's a dad. During dinner, Sawa starts to zone out because she's a little overwhelmed with all the pleasant vibes and everyone talking. Mutsuki takes her outside of the porch for a second. I haven't felt happy in a long time, she tells him. Thank you very much. Sora, Riku, and Michi walk Sawa home. In her empty apartment, she wonders, are they things you're born with? Or are a warm home and family things you only get in their world? Is that world even farther away than I thought? But she pushes that negative thought away and looks forward to having lunch tomorrow with her friends. Mutsuki calls Shiki. He wanted him to come to dinner with everyone, but Shiki sits alone in his room and looks out into the night. And after everything, Sawa doesn't end up with a fever and has to stay home the next day. Kind of like this dark introduction to Shiki. But
Yeah, they have an air of mystery about Shiki in this first volume, like kind of setting up, what is his relationship to Sawa? Like, why is Mutsuki keeping him in the loop? And why does he have an interest in Sawa's happiness and in her life? So, yeah,
I do like how... Like, Shiki's mentioned several times, and you're like, oh, who's Shiki? Who's that going to be? And then you see him, and you're like, oh, it's Akito's kid. Like,
yeah.
The second you see him.
I think immediately when you see his face, that's Akito's face. But yeah, I think that air of mystery because, how did Akito's kid turn out? It could go either way. I think that's an interesting thing to kind of build up from these early chapters. But I also feel like in general, it's fairly easy to tell like whose kids are whose because they, for the most part, look exactly the same as their parents. I mean, with some slight changes to their faces, but I think that was the interesting thing.
Yeah, I think the character design is pretty good in these.
Yeah,
like there's more variation on them, like compared to the original series, just from Takaya's art style developing.
Definitely,
and there's enough where it's like you can like see how they resemble their parents, but they also like look like individuals themselves.
Yeah, I think if you were to see them alongside their parents, like their differences between them would be more apparent. But yeah, they're also very immediately recognizable as now I can immediately tell whose kid is whose. And that was an interesting thing though because I forgot to mention this up top, but my first experience with Fruits Basket Nutter was when it first was getting published over in Japan and getting like scanlated. And so I was checking out those first couple chapters, but my first impression, just based on Sawa's character design, is that I thought that she was related to Toru because her hairstyle, she sort of resembles her.
Her face kind of resembles Toru's too, a little bit.
Yeah. But obviously, immediately you read it and you see that, she is a character who is completely disconnected with the Soma family from the previous series.
Yeah, she's the Toru analog in the series.
Yeah.
But
guess we still have the bonus to talk about.
Oh yeah, we had the bonus to talk about. But yeah, I also had I guess on that note, I also had the same experience as you where I was like I read a couple of the chapters as they were being simultaneously, I can't remember if they were being translated or simultaneously translated or something, scanlated, but I remember reading the first couple when it came out and being like, who's Sawa? Who's Shiki? Who's this? And Sawa does look like she could be a Soma. Like, I don't know. I was kind of waiting for the reveal. But yeah, it turns out that she's just, eventually it's very clear that she's just a separate person, not related to them.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was also first reading Another as it was new, I was at a point in time where I hadn't finished Fruits Basket, so I mean, in the first chapters, it's all characters that you would have known if you like they're descendants of characters or the children of the characters you would have known if you'd just seen the first anime and the corresponding manga material, so it wasn't like too confusing, except for Shiki. I think that probably might have thrown me for a loop back then. But I don't think I got farther reading it chapter by chapter past material from this first volume. But I remember, I think probably the translation of the scanlation was not as good, neither the lettering. So I don't know if I really had latched onto it in the same way that I do when I read it in volume form, like earlier this year and then now. Where like almost immediately I found myself very connected to and very sympathetic to Sawa and her situation, and I got invested in it very immediately. Yeah.
I kind of remember feeling the same way. I was just like where I felt more invested in, like, for example, Toru's character, the beginning of Fruits Basket, in the first chapter of Fruits Basket. Because I actually started reading the manga before seeing anything else, like before seeing the anime or whatever. Compared to Sawa, I was like, I don't know, I don't really know what's going on. Like, I definitely didn't feel like as sympathetic and attached to her. I would say.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit during your Fruits Basket conversation at some point about how, like, I mean, Fruits Basket itself has like an immediate hook in the like whole curse thing in like the first two chapters, whereas like this doesn't really have as much of a hook except for it's a sequel to Fruits Basket.
Yeah, I think the hook here for fans of Fruits Basket were just to see, oh, how did the characters we love from the original series, how did their children turn out? What can we learn about how their lives are like now as we read on the series? But it does lack the whole transform into animals upon touch with the opposite sex angle and angst of the original series, which the original series also sort of dropped like using midway through, and it became more about like the family drama and breaking the curse. But there's also another different hook.
Yeah.
But I will say I actually really like Sawa as a protagonist. I think before, maybe the translation I was reading just didn't communicate like her situation and her thoughts and feelings very clearly. But I will say Sawa as a character, like her situation, her relationship with her mother, they felt very real and visceral to my personal experiences. And I really connected. And there were a lot of times where, you know, the way Sawa would be self-depreciating herself and the way she would think like, oh, I don't want to cause any trouble for others, so I'm just going to avoid people. I want to live through life like causing as little trouble for anyone. I'm looking down at the ground. Like, I definitely saw that as, like, I could immediately pick upon and relate to those feelings, because those felt so real to my own thoughts and experiences at a point in time. And particularly also when we get into a relationship with our mother. So many of those conversations and interactions also felt so relatable. So, yeah, I think Sawa as a character, as, like, someone who is kind of close herself off to the world because of, you know, basically her parent kind of destroying her self-confidence and her ability to, you know, feel confident in like just reaching out to people and just asking for help and just, you know, just closing herself off to the world. Like, I think, you know, she is a realistic portrayal or of it, a very compelling portrayal of that type of character. And similarly, that is true of like how her relationship with her mother is explored. But yeah, I mean, that's just very preemptively, like I'm just laying that all out there before we even go into further exploration of that. But I really do like Sawa as a character. I really do find her very compelling.
I like Sawa as a character too. I think I just didn't really identify with her at first. I think like her thoughts and feelings become a lot clearer in like the second and third volume. And yeah, her interaction with her mom reminds me of not my personal experience, but things that other, you know, friends in high school with their parents, for sure.
Yeah, I think Fruits Basket has like a hook that keeps you around long enough to get attached to the characters.
Yeah.
And then like that hook can kind of drop away. Whereas this one, it's like it takes a couple chapters to get into the characters and you don't have that like immediate hook to like hang on to as easily. So I think it's easier to like drift away in the first chapter or two.
If you're not holding out to see what happened to your character's children or whatever that you like.
Yeah. Like, I know we got a question about this later, but, you know, does this series hold appeal to those who have not read Fruits Basket? I feel like if you were just to, like, read the first few chapters, it is hard to say, like, whether you would be super compelled if you didn't already have familiarity with Fruits Basket or an investment in the characters of it to want to see, like, how their children are like. And then, like, I think Sawa is a compelling character, but yeah, otherwise the hook of the series is just that, oh, we are learning more about what's happening with the next generation of Soma children as they are helping this girl. So, yeah. I feel like it doesn't quite stand on its own in this way, and like so much of the hook that it's making up for with the original's premise is just the fact that it's a sequel to it.
I agree. I think we'll tackle that later, but I guess we'll talk about the bonus chapter first. So at the end of volume 1, there's a bonus, and I think the bonuses are actually some of my favorite chapters in both of the two volumes. But the first one is at New Year's a few years back. Hajime chats with Mutsuki. Mutsuki's parents told him earlier that day about the curse, and Hajime says his parents told him a few years ago when he entered middle school. He says that he didn't believe them at first, but some things started to make sense. You know, the way his dad acted, horrible things that Ren said to him. And the boys are glad their parents told them. Maybe it's really special for our dads to see you and me standing side by side like this, Mutsuki says with a smile. They're called back to the room in the estate where all the other Soma kids have gathered for the New Year's celebrations. Mitsuki asks us if Hajime is really going to try to get into Kaibara High School. He is. I'm interested to know what kind of place they spent their time to get to where they are now, he says. And it's the end of the chapter. Yay. It's the end of the volume.
It's just such a lovely sentiment. It's
yes.
like, just to think that how close Hajime and Mitsuki are now just makes their parents so happy because of how strained their own relationship was. So it does mean so much to them that their kids have grown up to be like really close friends. And then I love that they also are just so interested in like learning more about their parents because they truly love them and want to know like how they grew into people they became. So it's just such a sweet sentiment. I really like it.
Yeah, that line like made me tear up the first time I read it, in combination with the picture of like the silhouettes of the two families watching the kids.
I think it's the second bonus chapter where I cried.
Yeah. Oh my god.
We'll get there. Don't worry.
It just kind of caught me off guard because I wasn't like expecting it the first time I was reading through, and then I was like, oh, like I think it's special for our dads to see us standing side by side. I was just like, oh, my heart.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And the silhouette of them watching as their parents watching them play and stuff. It's cute. I had seen some of these things kind of like floating around Tumblr, so I knew like a couple of the scenes, or I'd seen kind of like parts of it. But sometimes you don't know where it is, right? So it kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, that bonus chapter is very sweet. Anyway, well, shall we talk about the volume overall? We talked about a couple of things already, especially about Sawa and her introduction as a protagonist, and kind of like the hook of the series.
I mean, in general, I think the premise is a nice role reversal of what the original Fruits Basket was, where in Fruits Basket, it was like an outsider comes into this broken family and then helps them kind of mend their family relationships to kind of break free of the cycles of abuse. And then here, it's like this very loving family invites in an outsider to help her be able to form new connections with people and regain a sense of self-confidence in herself, and while helping her also with her family problems, even though they can't resolve them. And I think that's just a nice thing to kind of show and reflect upon the growth of the Soma family as a whole, that they're now in this place that they're all a pretty functional family unit, at least this generation of kids are, that they are all in a place where they are happy and they're thriving in what they like to do, that they can notice and reach out to someone else who is struggling and try and help them, lift them up. And obviously, as we'll explore more, like Mitsuki instigates this not entirely just to help Sawa, but to help, Shiki. So, he was also trying to help, someone in his own family in addition to Sawa, which is sort of similar to how Shigure was kind of manipulating Toru in some respects to, further his cause of breaking the Soma curse and getting Yuki and Kyo to grow. But I appreciate just how the role reversal is a nice reflection on how the characters have grown, which feels satisfying to know that after the end of the original Fruits Basket, that, the characters are living fairly happy lives now. And not entirely because, as we'll explore more with Shiki, he and, his mother, Akito, they're still struggling a little bit in the family. But, I think it's a nice thing to see. I think it's a nice direction and take to have for the sequel.
Yeah, I agree with that. I like the way... it's not obvious at first, but this is like, there's a good introduction to Shiki's, I don't know, this is an introduction to Shiki and Sawa's kind of similarities in what they're going through. There's a really good visual at the end where Sawa's kind of like alone in her apartment at the end, and Shiki's alone, like in his room or whatever at the end. It isn't obvious yet at this point, but this is the beginning of like framing how similar their situations are, which I didn't realize until, having read this through all the way, like a couple times at this point to have written these summaries. And so I kind of like that both as a visual element and also like as the beginning, sort of setting out the story, in addition to all the nice like fluffy feelings between Hajime and Mitsuki, and it is nice to see like Sora and Riku.
Oh
also,
yeah,
especially which we didn't talk about yet.
Sora's character is just
Just a side
so
note, does anyone here play
lovely.
Kingdom Hearts? Because
Yeah.
hearing those names together
No.
makes me do a
No, I
mental double
wonder,
take every time.
Yeah.
was that intentional?
I think it was.
Sakaya's part.
I think it was because Takawa loves video games, right? So yeah, I wouldn't be
That's
surprised.
funny.
Yeah.
But Sora, she is so fun. And I love how her personality is just so chipper, energetic, and just like doting. Like she like hugs everyone she meets,
Yeah.
and she like calls them
I can't
nicknames.
remember if it's in this volume or not, but she does like the horror thing with her like arms spread straight to her sides before she hugs somebody.
Yeah.
It's just really
Yeah.
funny.
And it's such a neat 180 from like, how we saw Rin throughout most of the original story, where she was, again, she kept to herself for the most part. She was a very dour, kind of stern person who was like trying to push people away. And now we see that her daughter is kind of someone who's like, super excited to get to know other people and super friendly with them. And I think, again, like seeing or interpreting like how the characters we knew in the original have kind of grown up and what their lives are like now, just seeing that how like Sora and Riku, the kind of kids they've grown up to be and how like friendly and helpful people they are. Like, I think that's just a nice reflection of like, yeah, they've really grown into a happy home, and their children are thriving and super kind people thanks to that. And I like seeing that. I like seeing that the kids are in a much better place than their parents were comparatively.
It makes me wonder at least what Rin would have been like if she wasn't in a shitty family situation. Like maybe she would have had a completely different personality. Like Rin was kind of in the situation that like Sawa is in, basically, right? Even worse, maybe in some ways, but like, yeah, I don't know. It's nice to see them thriving. It makes me wonder.
Yeah, she does seem pretty like in the couple of flashbacks we see with like her and Haru, like before everything went even more to shit. Like she's pretty like happy and like cheerful around him in those flashbacks.
And her parents until the time that everything went crazy. But yeah,
I think Sora is like how Rin could have grown up to be if her parents bestowed upon her genuine love and affection rather than that kind of false affection they had done for a lot of her early childhood until she called them out on it, and then they turned on a dime on her and then just treated her coldly from then, which really broke her heart and stuff. So I think that genuine love, I'm sure Rin and Haru are now showing to their kids, has helped them grow into like these pretty bright, cheerful people, although Riku is very similar to his father in terms of temperament and personality.
But still caring a lot about other people. Like he was like, this girl wanted to eat lunch with you, and you just like totally ignored her,
Yeah. A lot of empathy.
Yes.
A lot of consideration. Very thoughtful.
He's like, are you feeling sick? I'll carry you to the nurse's office. I don't know where it is, but we'll get there.
Yeah. That's a very
They're all
hard thing
good
to offer
kids.
too. Yeah, they're all good kids. Ah, it's so nice. It is really nice to see them thriving, as you said. Like, they're just nice kids. They're such good kids. Like, they wanted to go back to their parents' high school to like see where they came from and see how they got to the place where they became the way that they are now or whatever. It's cute. Mitsuki and Hajime especially are good boys. They want to, they're trying to help people, and it's very sweet. Shiki and Sawa, as you said, turns out. So, did you notice Hajime's bracelet? Very important.
I did. I wasn't sure what to make of that. Yeah.
I can't remember what panel it's in, but or what chapter.
Yeah, I guess Kyo passed it on to him.
It's when he's like cooking.
Oh, when they're cooking. Yeah, because he pulls up his sleeves.
And it's not exactly the same because it's got like more white beads than red ones, I guess. I was going to say black, but...
We all know they're red now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like, so there's actually an extra in some volume, I think it might be at the back of the third one or something, where there's like little drawings of all of them. It looks like it's like a bunch of white beads, and then there's like 3 from the bracelet, like 3 from Kyo's bracelet.
Yeah.
So it definitely looks like it has some of the beads from Kyo's bracelet, which is interesting and very sweet. Hajime is kind of an interesting character. Like, he's very reserved about his feelings and stuff. Like, he's also very kind, just like all of them, but I think he's a little more reserved. Like, I bet he has some kind of, this is a venturing outside of canon discussion, but I bet he has some like rationale for why he has the bracelet, and it's some kind of very personal reason that he has it and stuff. So it's cute.
He is very, very much a big brother. In, like
he's the dad. He's the dad friend.
And he has. I think they suggested that there are 3 kids in that family, right? He's got a younger brother and a younger sister.
Younger brother. His younger brother was the one who found
the ID.
Sawa's ID.
After she bumped into him and then completely forgot.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then it says they later at some point say they have a sister as well, a younger sister. So one thing that I noticed in this volume specifically at the end that reminded me of Fruits Basket, but I think it kind of relates to a lot of things that happen in this story, is they have this meal together, which is a very Takaya thing to do, I feel like, first of all. And the like Sawa wondering if like how feeling sort of like unnatural in that situation, and then wondering if those kinds of things only come to other people. It kind of reminded me of like the story with Uo and Toru in when they were in middle school, and kind of her backstory, all those sort of like mundanity of being with a family that cares about you and has a good relationship. And that it just the scene reminded me of that. And I like that scene. It's cute. It's all fuzzy. Everybody has sukiyaki. It's a big party. I didn't talk very much about Kinu. This is also important. I realized in my summary, I completely left her out, but Kinu was there. Kinu's Hattori and Mayuko's child. I guess Mayuko. It's never clear that it's her, but it can't not be her, right?
Yeah, I think her legend. No.
Oh wait, they say that she's a teacher. They
mentioned that.
Yeah. I think she looks more like Mayuko than Hattori. So
yeah,
she's Hattori's like distant eyes. Like distant isn't a good way to describe it. Whatever. Yes, enigmatic
distant eyes and Mayuko's hairstyle. So
that's how you know they're children.
I do have some questions about the genetics of the Zodiac hair coloring in this series.
Don't ask questions.
So does the curse rewrite that part of their DNA?
Apparently. Well, when the curse broke, their hair didn't change, so it must just be part of their DNA. Obviously, that's how it works, right? It's so that we can tell who they belong to. Yeah. But yeah, she just, anyway, so Kinu is there. Kinu is like there. It seems so, and Hajime, Mutsuki, and Kinu all live in Shigure's old house, like away from separate from their parents, which I guess is a thing to note. And it seems like, all the gang goes over and visits them quite a lot. So
yeah, Hajime and Mutsuki's parents, they all live in like more the countryside, so they kind of live in this boarding house like as a way to go to this school, because it's far from home. But yeah, it's interesting to call and fun to call back to the original like housing setup of the original. I do find it interesting that Kinu honestly shares Shigure's sort of laissez-faire kind of approach to work. Like she mostly lies around, and then like she's a night owl, so I guess she works at night, but like we see that she kind of puts off some of her deadlines or whatever. So interestingly similar.
I like where she's like, I want to do something that doesn't require a lot of effort. Exactly. Like, you're going to make your dad cry again.
Yeah. I was going to say, she did say something about that specifically, how she doesn't want to put in a lot of effort into things. I don't know. Maybe Hattori wouldn't be like that if he hadn't been in a horrible relationship or forced to erase people's memories or whatever. Like, we don't know. Or maybe Mayuko's like that. We also don't know that much about her, just that she cared about Hattori. But because obviously people are exactly like their parents. They can't have any other traits from anyone else. But
she was great teacher Mayuko. I mean, she was put in a lot of effort, right?
Yeah, she was great. Her students liked her, at least. Maybe she was like Miss Yukari or whatever from
Azumanga
Daioh. Any other things that you want to say about, or that we want to talk about regarding Volume 1?
I think Sawa's character arc in general was similar. In different ways, it's an amalgam of Toru and Ritsu's, I feel. Mainly because Sawa at the beginning, she's very apologetic. She's saying, I'm sorry all the time, and she's nervous and about talking or interacting with people. That's very similar to Ritsu's arc. And I feel also the kind of lesson she learns in this first volume is like, hey, when someone is trying to help you, you don't need to like feel I'm so so apologetic. You don't need to apologize for everything. You can just appreciate their help and not feel guilty about it, and say thank you. And that's ultimately like what she does when she asks Riku about like why he was a little colder before, and then he tells her about, oh, there's this girl who wanted to eat lunch with you, and then after like getting a bunch of advice, she says thank you finally, instead of like apologizing or saying I'm sorry for troubling you and stuff. I think that's good growth for her, but it also did remind me of Ritsu's storyline in the original. And then from there, obviously in the next couple of volumes, we'll see the story is going to kind of touch upon the themes of the original in terms of like breaking free from like an abusive situation and then recognizing your own self-worth and taking control and living your best life and stuff like that, which we'll get into. But yeah, I think it's interesting that Tetsuya revisited like themes from the original in the way that she does through her character.
Yeah, it is a very similar story in general, but in reverse, like you were talking about earlier, where it's the Soma family are the ones who are helping out the outsider, as opposed to the other way around. So there's a lot of like similar themes and a lot of similar like elements of the story, like they eating meals and saying thank you instead of apologizing for everything all the time, and a lot of kind of like similar points are touched on. I think Sawa as a character has good growth, even though this is a short series. Like, her perspective is already starting to change on the situation a little bit. Like, she started looking forward to seeing other people and being more involved socially with others, even at the end of this first volume.
By the end of the first volume, she's not only joined the student council and made friends with the Somas, but also has made friends with the girl who wanted to, eat lunch with her and her friend. And so, she's opened up her social circle, and she's no longer, as alone as she was in the beginning. And she started to feel more comfortable and confident around people and interacting with other people. And it's nice to see that growth for her. And I do think that each volume progresses her growth in very interesting steps.
So Volume 2, Chapter 5, Sawa eats lunch with her classmates, which is a great step in the right direction. During lunch, Ryuko freaks out at how amazing the Soma crew was at Sports Day, which transitioned into proclaiming that she'll one day make a documentary about them. And Principal Makoto Takei is also lured into another scream-off with her, but Riku eventually stops him.
Oh my god, I love how the conflict between Ryuko and Takei is that Takei is like a big stan of Yuki. And then but Ryuko loves the entire Soma family. So I love the quote where she says, "You only like Mutsuki-san's dad. Favoritism is heresy. It is the mark of a fool." Like,
I enjoyed how Riku was there to stop Makoto Takei from going out of control, just like his father. I'm not gonna lie, I really like that Makoto Takei is there. I really enjoy his presence. I know you said that you like Ryuko before. I'm not a huge fan because it's the same gag as Makoto, but Motoko. The same gag as Motoko. But
I do think the enthusiasm.
I feel like it's kind of funny that the principal's involved too.
Just how over the top she is. And the fact that it's like, again, she doesn't have romantic feelings. So it kind of escapes the kind of the baggage of the original fan club, in which it's like a bunch of these girls like who all want the affections of Yuki, but they've kind of made this pact to like not go after him by just being in this club together, but they're like being super protective of him and trying to warn off other girls from getting close to him. So it's kind of like a problematic, possessive, obsessive club. Here it's like Ruriko is just like is leading a cheerleading squad for the Somas. Like she just wants everyone to know how great they are. And like even though she like chastises Sawa for like getting close to the Somas without knowing who they are, she like tries to educate her, and when she is like doing a good job or helping them, she like gives her like kind of compliments. Like she does it in kind of a backhanded way, but she is like she isn't trying to like keep her away from the Somas. She's just like, hey, you need to know how great they are, and not do anything that would besmirch them, because don't sully their good name, because these people are awesome and we want everyone to know how awesome they are. And I also appreciate that like the rest of the fan club is actually more enamored with Ruriko than the Somas. Like, we have that note. It's like, it seems that the other people in her fan club really are there because they admire her and her passion for the Somas more so than they are also passionate about the Somas. So, I think this is a fun, different take that I actually like a lot more than the Prince Yuki fan club, the original.
I do like it more than the Prince Yuki fan club, for sure. But yes. I respect her passion. The Somas are great people. Have you seen them? Look at them.
I like the part where she talks about like her mom finding her like staying up all night writing the paper, and she's like, "I get it, but chill."
I specifically called that out in my summer letter because I thought it was funny. I was like, "Wow, even Motoko thought it was too much." Like that's saying something. Sawa's class friends, turning back to volume 2, Sawa's class friends, Riku and even Ruriko in her own way tell Sawa that she's been doing a good job, like you said, with her student council duties especially. With everything going on, Sawa didn't have time to keep her head down, and now she can even eat with friends in class. Have I managed to change a little? She wonders. Later at student council time, Sawa remembers that Hajime gave her ID and asked how he got it. Sawa ran into his little brother, and he was the one who returned it. Sawa wonders, Maybe I have managed to change a little bit because I found people who accept me. The next day, Sawa heads out to shop for something to wear for her upcoming visit with her friends. It's hot, and she sees a boy looking extra pale and sweaty sitting on the steps near her apartment. She offers to walk him home, and it turns out his home is the Soma place. "I'm Shiki Soma," he says when they arrive. "Nice to meet you."
Yeah.
Guys,
and it's such a good moment of growth for Sawa. Like, now she is... Yeah, she's in a confident enough place that she reaches out to someone to help them.
She noticed a person.
Like, yeah. Really nice to see.
Yeah. She was very hesitant at first, but she did help him in the end, which was good. In Chapter 6, Shiki and Sawa arrive at the Soma boarding house, as you described earlier also. Kinu lets them in while Mutsuki and Hajime are out. Shiki asks him if Mutsuki is being a hindrance, but Sawa says no, he's being very kind, and thanks to him, she's having a lot of fun. She babbles for a bit and then apologizes for said babbling. "I'm happy to hear that," Shiki says, "as long as you're enjoying yourself." He thanks her for calling out to him today, and the conversation triggers something for Sawa. But before we can dig into that, Mutsuki and Hajime return from Mutsuki's garden, and they invite Sawa to stay for lunch and offer to let her borrow some clothes instead of buying new ones. While they show Sawa where the clothes are, talk turns to Mutsuki's aunt and uncle again, and Sawa remarks that his uncle seems fun, but Shiki and Hajime's pained expressions say otherwise. Sawa stays for another dreamy lunch, and Mutsuki has a brilliant idea for a part-time job for Sawa.
I love the gag in this chapter when after Kinu tells them that like Mutsuki has like a garden much like his father, like Sawa thinks, oh, his father must be like super buff.
Must be super buff. And then the writing in the background in the panel is like, muscles are great or something. It's like faceless guy with like who's super tan with like a straw hat. I was like, yeah, it's definitely Yuki. 100%.
Maybe it is. We haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, no, maybe
that's true. Ripped. He could be like that now. We don't know. He got ripped and became a farmer who wears like a straw hat and like tank tops. We don't know. I mean, he was really easily able to fight Kyo. I think he was secretly ripped the whole time.
But just hiding his muscles.
Yes, exactly. It's possible to do that, you know? You can just hide them. That's what I've been doing all this time.
Well, that's an anime trope. People like hide their true strength and then they can like suddenly like increase their muscles like through just like a power-up explosion thing.
I feel like there was just an author's note in Furuba where she was like, I don't like drawing muscly people or whatever, so I can't remember. Like, I don't remember exactly what it was.
That explains
the opposite of Arakawa.
The lankiness of her character. Yeah, so opposite of Arakawa.
Yeah, right.
She has an author's note where she's like, I like drawing muscly men and curvy women.
I think almost everything about Fruits Basket is the opposite of Fullmetal Alchemist in a way. Like the style, like the visual style is like completely different and very like Takaya has a distinct style, but it's very shoujo-y. There's a lot of like texture. There's actually a screenshot I have later that's like so much textures, so many bubbles.
I did take note of the plaid texture again.
Yeah. So there's anyway, in some ways I feel like they're very opposite. In some ways they're similar. You gotta like look out for each other.
Yeah, they're similar. There's some similar messages. Yeah.
Different execution though.
Definitely. I think it's funny that they had like completely opposite author's notes about how they like to draw muscles.
I'm pretty sure there's an author's note that says that. I could
Yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
for Arakawa, definitely.
In one of the early volumes. Yeah. Because she's like joking about how like everyone should be a lot more muscly than they are with like their martial arts, like their martial arts training and everything. But
they got more muscly later too, like a little bit at the end, but still, yeah. It's like if you've been a martial artist for years and you're like 16, you probably have more muscles than Joe and you can. Just saying. Anyway, well, I'm glad we had muscle talk.
Yeah.
In chapter 7, Mutsuki brings up the idea to Sawa at student. Oh, sorry. He brings up the idea of his brilliant idea for a part-time job to Sawa at student council, and everyone else looks concerned. Hajime even says that she can leave if she feels uncomfortable. She can just leave. Mutsuki isn't able to take her there, but Sora and Riku go with her to Ayame too. Did you see the signs? If you scroll down in my notes, you'll see the two signs. They're different. It's a different store. Did he open another store? This is very important. These are the things that I latched onto.
Yeah.
It's
interesting.
yeah, that's what.
But I like.
Yeah, it says this is their like second location or whatever.
But I like Sawa's initial reaction to the building. It's like, oh, it's really nice. And then she sees like the plate, and then she's like, wait, I thought this plate was for like a bar. This is for a clothing shop. Really?
If everyone's like, the sign is so sketchy. Like every time they see it on the shop sign.
I like everyone's deep concern, especially Hajime. He like grabs her by the shoulders. At the door to Ayame 2, Sora knocks on the door loudly, and they're greeted with a "shut up" from Chizuru, who's running the shop all alone while his parents are away, and his older sister Hibika bounced to Paris spur of the moment.
Very Ayami-like.
And I bet Mine.
No, she is also very like Mine as like a
very
see it when she returns.
But Ayame and Mine are very similar, I think, in personality to a certain extent. So that kind of makes sense.
I guess the only people who understand each other.
Yeah, no, they're on similar wavelengths.
Definitely. Sawa starts to work at the store, but her thoughts drift to Shiki. Later, Michi Minabe asks how working at the shop is and how Chizuru is, and Sawa says that he's kind. Later, she overhears Chizuru talking to his parents on the phone and can tell that he loves them. This leads to some dark thoughts for Sawa, but she snaps out of it when Shiki and a friend of his, Ryo, show up. They tell her more about what's been going on with Chizuru's family, and they came to check on him. They're all in the Go Club together at their middle school. I hope you can hear me smiling because I think it's really funny and cute that they're in the Go Club together.
Shiki
My
no
favorite
Go.
implication from this is that Hana stayed friends with Aikido.
Yeah, no, that's a really charming thing. Yeah.
That is true. I didn't even think about that. That's very important.
Aikido were friends,
You mean
now they're kids are
Aki-chan?
friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sawa says that she's been wondering about Shiki, and Shiki was wondering about her too. Chizuru and Ryo begin the teasing as he lets them into the shop. Shiki asks how Sawa is, and since she seemed down before, but she says she feels a little better now and thinks after talking to him. Hibika makes a grand entrance and then decides it's dress-up time for Sawa. Just like
very
Mother.
Mine.
And that's the end of chapter 9. I like how or chapter 7. I like how the chapter closes on the door with us like screaming coming from the door. Sawa being forced to dress up or whatever. In chapter 8, it's revealed that Ryo is Hana's son, and then Hana married a foreigner who got on a plane to come see her, which was cute.
Yeah.
One of the best reveals.
It's so interesting, too. Like, because at the end of Fruits Basket, we were led to believe that she might end up with...
Shisho.
Yeah, but I'm glad to see that she just ended up with someone new. Which is, it's nice that, there were established couples in the originals. It's nice to see that, some of the characters met someone new over the course of their lives, too. Which is also... more true to life, I think, than everyone just meeting their loves of their lives in high school.
Yeah, at the end of high school.
Part of me was just that it happened just for Kyo's reaction, though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 100% the best part about it is how all of Kyo's reaction to every interaction between Hana and Shisho. That part is great.
He's just so worried. He's like, Shisho, please don't marry her. And he's like, oh, what are you talking about?
And she's just, oh, you're so cute, my son.
Hana being like, you have to call me mother.
I'll do this if you call me mother. And Kyo's just permanent like scream face emoji face like the whole time. It's a callback to Megumi's wish for her when she was struggling in middle school, that a special person would find Hana even if they had to get on a plane to come see her. And that made my heart smile when I read it. Unfortunately, after hanging out with friends, however, Sawa finds her mother at home when she returns. Sawa's mother asks to see her phone and berates her when she doesn't respond, and Sawa tries to say that nothing is wrong, she's not mad. But her mother's anger escalates until Sawa shuts down in frustration. She leaves the next morning before her mother wakes up. She brings the clothes that she borrowed unwashed to school, hoping that this keeps them from getting thrown away by her mother, and hoping to wash them after school before returning them. Sora runs into her, notices the clothes, and says that she has an idea about how to take care of them. Sawa meets Sora after school, and it turns out that idea is just to take the clothes back to the Soma house without doing anything. Just like, Kinu, put these in the wash, okay? And Sawa's like freaking out.
Yeah, Sora's absolute horror over this.
Yeah. I appreciate Sora's attitude. It's really funny.
Yeah. She's just direct. Like, hey, we'll just give these back. You can wash them. You don't have to overthink
Kinu, take care of this. But they meet Mina Soma, Momiji's tiny child, and Mina asks Sawa to come join her at the batting cages to return the laundry favor. And at the batting cages, Sawa's mother calls her. Sawa lets it go to voicemail, but checks it immediately. And of course, the message is full of rebuke, saying things like, you think it would be better if your mother wasn't around, right? Hajime saw the call, and after Sawa's done listening to the message, he asks her about her relationship with her mom. She worries about telling him the truth. Before she says anything, Hajime says, you don't have to tiptoe around it just because lots of us like our parents, and talks about some of the bad relationships in the Soma family. Sawa says in a wavering voice that if she were to say something negative about her mom, it would be ungrateful. She's the person who brought her into this world. Hajime says, maybe she did bring you into this world and raise you, but just because she's your family doesn't mean it's okay for her to say whatever she wants. It's never okay. Expecting someone to say thank you to their family when that family is just stepping all over them, that's just abuse. It's just a curse.
He said the thing.
He said the thing. This is beat one of It's Just a Curse. Sawa says that they aren't getting along. She always says that I'm no good. The things that I do are always wrong. I start to feel like a punching bag. I start to wish she wasn't around. Got it, Hajime says. Thanks for telling me. Mitsuki, Sora, and Mina, who overheard her, also reassure her in various ways, including Mina offering to get the family's lawyers involved if she needs it.
And I like the comment Hajime makes, like, why you would go that far, and like, shit, why don't I just use the privilege, the status I was born with, to do what I want? And he says, man, I'm worried about what kind of adult you're going to grow up to be.
Hajime is like, basically constantly like, I'm worried for the next generation, like every time something happens. It's really funny. It's okay, even if I'm like this, Sawa thinks. As she swings and misses, the machine's pitches when it's her turn at bat. When the gang returns to the Somo house, Momo, Mina's father's little sister and assistant, is there and quickly introduces Sawa before they head to the airport. They invite Sawa to visit the Soma's cottage for the summer. And when Sawa returns home later that night, the lights are all on, but fortunately her mom isn't home. She flops to the ground with relief. If it were that easy to completely change yourself, no one would suffer, she thinks. But even so, this is hope. Even if it's just a little tiny bit, I definitely felt it. Another day, another place, at Go Club, Chizuru tells Shinji that he heard that Sawa will be coming to the cottage this summer, and he drops the Go pieces he's carrying. Every time I talk about Sawa's mother, you take a deep, deep breath. I hear
my God.
a pained breath.
Yeah. Like, man, like Sawa's mom, again, like the interactions that she has with her, very, very real experiences. I can relate to them very hard. And the sense of anxiety and stress and like just claustrophobia in how Takaya frames these scenes. Like the interaction with her mother at the beginning when she starts berating her, and we just see like close-ups of like her mom's mouth, like she's just like a page full of just text bubbles that she's just going on, and then we turn the page and just see Sawa just screaming internally.
Yeah, the way the panels go dark and the whole page like fills up with the speech bubbles is like really effective on getting across that like
it captures
just
that
overwhelming sensation.
Yeah, the overwhelmingness, the horror, and the stress of it all. And the same thing is with the phone call later, the message that she leaves, where she's like just berating Sawa in like passive aggressive language, and she's like trying to make her out to be the bad guy, despite like and trying to emotionally manipulate and guilt trip her. It's just brutal stuff. I felt this true to life to experiences I had, and I think this is a very real portrayal of this kind of abusive parent and how they try to interact with their child, and like they try to present themselves as like the kind of the person who's in the right, even though they're the one who's like kind of emotionally abusing their child and like constantly putting them down. And we saw that earlier in the series where Sawa mentioned that like her mom came home late and she was like apologizing to her a bunch about like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late and stuff like that. And Sawa was just like, he's talking to her just is making me feel exhausted, because she recognizes the insincerity in like her words and behind like her attempt at being kind or apologetic. And we kind of see that at the beginning of this scene and this interaction here when she comes home to her, and like her mom is like smiling and making the pretense of being a little polite at first, but then it's just like as it goes on increasingly ripping her before outright like chastising and berating her. And I also really felt pain that like the Sawa's anxiety of just like going home and just like hoping that she won't have to interact with her mother, and then that sense of relief when she's not there. Like it is such a horrible, sad thing to like live with someone you don't want to see, or like you're afraid of seeing someone in your own home. So again, like I really, really felt like Sawa's experiences with her mother here.
I mean, for her, it's also like such a wild card too, because her mom is like gone constantly. So it's like it's not like she knows that she's going to be there. Like it's a question of if she's going to be there. And then on top of that, the anxiety of having to deal with it.
Yeah, that erraticness is another source of stress. Yeah.
Yeah, on top of her just trying to make like, first of all, pretend that she's sincere in her feelings of any kind of regret, which she obviously doesn't have, the Sawa's mother, and then also like making everything become like Sawa's fault, or like trying to make her feel guilty about the way that she like behaves when Sawa hasn't actually done anything like at all, really. Like she hasn't responded, and so then the non-response is also something to be like that the mother tries to make her feel guilty about too.
Yeah, anything that Sawa does that her mother doesn't want her to do, or her mother doesn't like her doing, she flips it around to portray Sawa as in the wrong and like actively hurting her or against her. Like in her text message, she says, "Oh, you don't want to talk to me? Then I guess you don't want me around. So I'm going to leave and not come back for a long time. And when I do come back, I hope you apologize to me. I would really appreciate it." She uses that kind of like faux, like polite, respectful language to, again, further place a burden of guilt on Sawa and try and manipulate her into feeling like bad and in the wrong. So it's very painful, like very real portrayal, that kind of like emotional manipulation and abuse. But beyond that, in this chapter, I also just was so happy to see Momo and just get that confirmation that Momiji and Momo did reconnect, and now they have a close sibling relationship. It's so nice.
They know about each other, and they're like, Momo's like his assistant and like taking care of his daughter.
Yeah.
It's like amazing. Everything about it is great.
That was like the one thing at the end of the original where it's like, oh man, I wish we could have seen them reconnect, and now we get that here. Momiji and Momo, we have confirmation that they have reconnected, and now they're very close. And
it made me really happy.
Yeah, and she's involved with Momiji's family. Yeah, that's so nice. Again, also a very good reiteration of the core theme of the series and Hajime's message to Sawa. Like I mentioned before, the idea of like, family bonds, the family obligation is like a curse. If they are mistreating you, you should not feel like obligated by that relationship. You don't feel like you should owe your mother anything, even though she is technically taking care of you. If she is like mistreating you and she's like making your life miserable, you don't owe anything to her. Which I think, again, is a message we saw in the original. I think it's applied again here in a nice way as well.
Right. In chapter 8.5, so we're still in volume 2, but in chapter 8.5, Sawa receives her performance review from Ruiko. As we said before, Ruiko wrote a whole report about how well she'd been doing or whatever and gave it to her. Turns out that Ruiko knows that she was invited to the cottage and that she went last year and then spent like the rest of the summer vacation writing a report until her mother gently tapped her on the shoulder and told her, "I get it, but chill out." Which if that isn't character growth for Motoko, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, she has a self-awareness of like how little obsessive she was when she was, obsessed with
it seems that way.
So she can recognize that in
She's
daughter.
like, we've all been there.
Yeah,
but...
you gotta take a step back here.
Calm it down.
And for what it's worth, Ruriko, listened to her mother. She realized that she was right, and so she is willingly like staying away from the Soma cottage because she knows she'll just relapse into those bad habits. So there's a sense of perspective from her, self-awareness from her that I appreciate too. Like she is a fangirl to Soma through and through, but she knows some boundaries have to be drawn.
It's okay. I don't think the material from her report went to waste because I think it shows up later in the Culture Festival. But
yeah.
But yes, and then she doesn't. She says that she's not going to the cottage this year. Mitsuki uses his chaotic good skills to craft a school event notice for Sawa's mom in case Sawa's mom gives her trouble about coming to the cottage. And most importantly, we learned that Jason the bear still haunts the cottage.
And I love how Hajime is like being so apologetic for his dad and sad about his dad. Like, oh, my poor dad getting tricked by this over and over
Even
again.
in the next generation.
Even by the next generation. And Mitsuki's like, and I'm sure the one after that too.
The next generation too, yes. Yeah, family inside jokes are the most important part of a family.
There's a note on Jason in the translation notes for this volume, which makes me laugh a lot.
I think it would... Again, I don't think anybody who's reading Fruits Basket Another wouldn't have read Fruits Basket, but yeah, it would be really... some of the jokes would be really confusing if you didn't know.
Yeah.
Or just weird, like Jason is a bear. Why is Jason a bear? Anyway, they're not talking about like Jason Voorhees or whatever. So anyway,
with the translation note says something. It's like Jason's a character from the American horror series Friday the 13th,
and also a bear.
Shigeru tricked Kyo into thinking it was a bear or whatever. It's really funny. Yes, in Fruits Basket, Shigeru pretends Jason is actually a dangerous breed of bear to scare Yuki, Kyo, and Toru.
Well, it only scares Kyo and Toru, just for the record. Because Yuki is like, Jason is from a horror movie. You guys are stupid.
Yeah.
But I still love the gag that when they step in they see the footprint or whatever, and they're like, Jason, it's Jason. Even isn't it?
And Yuki's like, it's not Jason.
It's not Jason. It's like a combination of too many horror tropes. It's like Jason and like someone in the woods to get you, but also a bear. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I like the gag we made up that like Yuki's a secret horror buff, which is why he was so annoyed with him getting the Jason thing
He's
wrong.
simply annoyed that they're incorrect. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Yeah, I could see Yuki being a fan of darker things, with him hanging out with his rats and all that, you know. Like that's right
His
there,
rat
that
army.
panel from the first chapter where he
It's so
summons rats.
creepy.
Yeah, no.
But then I feel like there's a scene later that's like a flashback to that, and the rats are just like doop doop doop, like picking all the stuff. Like it doesn't look like the way that it was drawn in the first one.
It's because we know they're cute now. We didn't know they were cute at the time.
That's true. And if you're
Just
me, you
this
didn't even know
creepy
they were
kid
rats at first.
with a swarm of rats behind him.
Rats. I was like, what is happening? Mhm. Anyway, are we ready to cry? Because it's time to talk about the Volume 2 bonus. So in this bonus, Mutsuki remembers making footprints in the snow as a kiddo with his parents and how happy he was. But he eventually learned that life wasn't all fun and happiness, and soon after he started middle school, his father told him about the Zodiac curse. He thanks his father for telling him about it. I'm glad you're my parents. I'm glad I live in this house with you and Mom. It's warm and fun. This house will always be the place that I want to come home to. It's a little embarrassing, but I felt like it was the right time to say it, you know? And he looks up with concern and sees his father crying. On that day, I learned one other thing, he narrates. People cry when they're happy too. I'm not crying, you're crying. That one's really good. I love this bonus chapter very much.
It's so
Baby
wonderful.
Mitsuki is super adorable also.
Mm-hmm.
Baby Mitsuki is super adorable, yes. And it is wonderful. The sentiment is wonderful.
Yeah, because you could tell that Yuki probably had like a lot of, worry about telling Mutsuki all these things, and he's worried like what Mutsuki would think of him after telling all this stuff, and maybe he was also worried about, being a good father to Mutsuki before this too. And then like Mutsuki just telling him that, I love you, I love my mom, I love this place. This is my home, and it'll always be my home. And that thank you for creating that for me.
Yeah, well, neither Yuki or Machi ever felt happy at their own homes.
So that's just so emotional that they've been able to provide that for their son. It's just it's just so touching to see Yuki move the tears by like son just telling him that he loves him and he loves the life that he's lived thanks to him. It's very satisfying. Just again as a reflection of how far they've grown and like how much better their lives are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like also in that scene, there's the callback with the badminton birdie. Because that was the scene that Yuki was like, when they were playing badminton together, he was like, I want to find like a warm place, like a warm home or whatever. So I like the little visual reference there. It's very sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And of course the callback to the walking in the snow with Machi's story.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm. How could I forget something so important that's like so obvious in this chapter? It's interesting that you pointed out that like this is about how far they've grown and like how they hated the places that they lived. And I think it's said later that like Machi doesn't even talk to her parents still. So I'm sure it was touching for them to hear that they have created a warm home for themselves and Mutsuki.
I mean, even to refer back to like Hajime's story in the Volume 1 bonus where he's like reflecting on, how people was complimenting about like looking like his dad, but Kyo was like always kind of nervous about that. There's like still baggage from our characters like past and their experiences that makes them like worried about like even now as adults about like what kind of lives they're living in, if they're providing good examples for their children and how their children will grow up. Like they're worried about that. So having these moments of reassurance from the children to say that they love their families, they love their parents, and are so happy to be their children it's really sweet. And I think it's a nice moment it's nice to see them feel reassured by like just the fact that their children are happy and thriving.
Mm-hmm. And also the way that the family, we kind of talked about it earlier, but like that it's probably a relief for them to see the like the kids all hanging out together and having good relationships when they struggled so much as children themselves, forming relationships with one another, and like the way that like hope, you know, it seems like some people in the Soma family are still some people in particular are still really hanging on to those things that and saying stuff that's like based on the curse to the next generation of Soma children. So yeah, hearing that, I'm sure that that's a challenge for, you know, like people like Yuki and Kyo, and so I'm sure hearing that was very reassuring for him. In terms of the second volume overall, we kind of talked about how Sawa she was starting to kind of like grow and change as a character in the first one. I think even more so in this one, especially realizing and recognizing that she's able to change because of the positive attitude of, you know, people around her. Like she's able to talk about like the things that are happening with her and her mom, and that people aren't going to shun her. She's been kind of led to think that way by her mom, by other people earlier in her life. So it's nice to see Sawa growing a little bit more.
Yeah.
And meeting more Somas, which is also always important.
Again, it's nice to see that Sawa, at the start of this one, has grown enough to a place where she notices someone who might need help and reaches out to them. No longer is just like looking at the ground and just not noticing what's in the world around her. Now she's like paying a little more attention to other people, and also noticing and being more confident that maybe she does have you know, the ability to help people, and she has a little more, you know, confidence in herself thanks to the positive reinforcement of the people around her. And that anxiety she has of like people rejecting her, if they know how she's really like, or like what her family circumstances are. It's nice to see her also overcome those by just like letting other people know how she's doing and getting the reassurance that, hey, now she has people in her life that will be there to support her, and they won't turn her away just because, you know, she has some problems in her life and because of her mothers and stuff like that. I think there was this was it in this volume or the next time she meets Shiki, where Shiki is like thanking her, and she thinks to herself, oh, like, this is making me uncomfortable. I'm not as good a person as he seems to think I am, and stuff like that.
I think it's in the next one, because it's when they go to the aquarium. But yeah, coming up,
like she starts to feel a little more comfortable as the story goes on, in the fact that, you know, she might still have like these anxieties and insecurities about, like, you know, what kind of person she is, but she can recognize that, hey, other people can see things differently in her than she sees in herself, which was also a theme in the original Fruits Basket, of how, like, you know, a lot of the characters were very self-depreciating of themselves and looked to other people aspirationally of, hey, I wish I was more like that person. When that person was also looking to them and saying, hey, I wish I was more like them. So similarly, Sawa's kind of starting to reconcile that, hey, maybe other people see something in her that she hasn't been seeing in herself, because she hasn't been getting that positive reinforcement from other people for so long.
Because it's on her back.
Yes, it's on her back.
One callback they didn't do in the series.
Yeah, how dare. No onigiri references. But yeah, thematically, at least a callback for sure. I feel like there was a couple of things that happened, or like things that I noticed that after reading the series through and then reading it again, it like things that kind of felt like just one thing, but maybe it was referencing another thing. Like I don't think I mentioned this, but in the first volume, I almost called him Kyo. Hajime is like, when he returns Sawa's ID, he's like, see, she doesn't remember. And Mitsuki's like, well, you know, she probably wouldn't. And obviously it's kind of like referring to her ID, but I think it could also be referring to like remembering the Somas or remembering Shiki or anything like that. And in this same chapter now, like Shiki says that he's glad that she's happy. And I think that that's not just in the moment, but also because he saw her alone, you know, as is revealed in the third volume. So there's a couple kind of like things that I felt like just changed a little bit when you go back and look at it after reading the series all the way through, about the way that people react. We already talked briefly about like Shiki's like why he's interested in her, and it's slowly revealed that it's because of what happened to them, what happened to Sawa as a child specifically. So another little callback here in this volume. I still think Momo being there was like one of the great, like, best parts. I was like, yay, Momo and Momiji have a relationship.
Yeah. That again.
Momiji found his love. Not with Toru, with somebody else.
Yeah, no.
Did he bring her back and brag about her like he said he was going to?
I'm sure he did.
See.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately left out also. More unfortunately than not having onigiri, whatever onigiri metaphors, but...
It's so interesting the characters from the original that we see return in this, like make a full-on appearance rather than kind of a flashback, more obscured appearance. Yeah, Momo is one of them. Then we have Megumi, Takei, and then Hinata, who was like a little baby, in the first series. And now
it's mostly ones who were like younger, so they're in the original series.
Yeah, very interesting. Probably pointed,
except for Takei, but he doesn't seem to have matured any.
No,
he's not that different.
He's emotionally at the same level as he was as a teenager.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a very interesting pointed choice not to include any of the main like Zodiac family members, and of course like Toru and like people like directly involved in relationships with them. You know, I think probably to keep the focus more squarely on the younger generation.
Yeah, I feel like Takaya said something about this, but I don't know. But it's definitely purposeful. I don't think she ever planned to have anyone actually appear. Only silhouetted like a Yame. I mean,
you see like some silhouettes and some like from the shoulders down or like from behind images, but you don't see anybody's faces.
And a lot of references to them, so like things that we know happen. Like I feel like I actually made a list of. I think I actually made a list of all the things that like that we learned like from about the previous characters. There's even like in this chapter, I didn't talk about it specifically, but Hajime talks about his paternal like Kyo's father, his paternal grandfather, and how he doesn't like how he hates him and whatever.
Yeah,
as opposed to Grandpa Kazuma, who he loves, and he's more family than Kyo's father will ever be or whatever. So there's some things like that are alluded to, but they don't really appear. Yeah,
we get the sense that, the relationships a lot of these kids have with their grandparents might not be great. It seems like a lot, like the strained parental relationships we saw in the original have not improved terribly, in the years that have passed since it ended. So... Yeah, it's as is noted with like Machi's parents also. She doesn't talk to them much and stuff. And of course, it becomes
pretty clear with Akito. Yeah.
Yeah, with Ren.
And Ren. Yeah. That later that some things, as much as many things have changed, I think in the third volume there's a bit of a turn where we see that some things in the Sohei family definitely haven't changed at all. So it's very interesting. Which I feel like was kind of a theme from Fruits Basket. It's like, like it's possible to change if you try, but some people never will, and some things won't, and you just have to leave them behind or move forward on your own. So that theme continues a little bit in this. There's a developing relationship between Sawa and Shiki, which is important, I guess. Everyone's like it's a shoujo. We gotta have some love relationships, right? Right.
I think it's
I like him dropping all the go pieces with no change in expression.
Yeah,
very important.
Well, I think it's interesting that Takaya didn't do the obvious route and have it be kind of a love triangle thing with Sawa and Mutsuki and Hajime. But rather she forms a connection with Shiki, who, as we also discussed before, is a parallel to Sawa in many ways. They're both characters who, spend a lot of their time alone and have self-isolated because they don't want to trouble other people and have, often been berated a lot as children to kind of having a lower sense of self-worth and self-confidence in themselves. And there is a big difference between Sawa and Shiki, as is explored and mentioned in the next volume, is that at least with Shiki, he has his cousins and, you know, members of his family who are looking out for him and support him, and they make him feel less alone because he knows they care about him. Whereas with Sawa, as is noted, like, she is all alone. There was like no one for the longest time who was looking out for her and protecting her.
He has parents who care about him, even though one of them is Shigure.
You can care about someone and still tease them incessantly, apparently. That's
I really love all the digs at Shigure from everyone. It's like everyone thinks that he's a good for nothing child of a man child. But like Shiki does say that like
it's like he's still immature and obnoxious, but he's a good dad.
He read him stories. It's shown later.
Yeah.
That's important, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that Shigure is a good dad, but he's not Shigure. There's that. But yeah, so yeah, it is. I definitely was mentally prepared to ship Sawa and Hajime, but it's just like not a thing at all. So I was like, yeah, who of the two is she gonna get paired with? No, none of them. It's Shiki, it turns out. So
I do
but yeah,
think
it's a good pairing, I think.
Yeah, like I think thematically and like emotionally the pairing works. I don't know necessarily how I feel about the age gap of Sawa being like first year high school and Shiki being first year middle school. I guess it's not the most problematic thing at their age. 2-3 years, I think. Yeah. So at their age, I don't think it's the most problematic comparative to other age gap relationships we saw in the original. But it is kind of...
Yeah, I would say that.
It does feel like, though, a high schooler and middle schooler almost... Those feel like two distinct phases of your life, so...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a very innocent romance in the series.
Yeah.
That's what Chizuru and Ryo tease him about constantly later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they're
that's
just
cute.
like, I want to talk to you. I want to hold hands. Like, very cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their relationship is like entirely separate from like school. Like, so like the respective like power dynamics of being a like high schooler versus a middle schooler doesn't really come up that much.
Yeah.
Because it's all outside of the school environment.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's definitely not as controversial as some of the other relationships in Fruits Basket, that's for sure. But yeah, it's kind of interesting though because they're also like Sawa at least is constantly encouraging. At least in the very beginning, Shiki's very like formal with her, and Sawa's like, "Whatever, dude. Like I'm just a kid too." Like, so I think there's also not a lot of like, it's not like she's enforcing that she's like in high school and stuff like that too. So yeah, they seem to have a
respect
mutual
to
support.
age in terms of like, oh, I'm older, so hence you need to pay like respect to that fact, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that. So, and then later, I guess I'll get to the end later, but it's like the very end of the series. Any other things that we want to talk about from Volume 2 before we move into Volume 3?
I thought Sora at the batting cage was very funny. How like they know that even the sports day event, like she's looks very athletic. She has great form and keeps her eye on the ball and thing, but she can't hit word a damn. Like she misses all her balls, and then
she can't play badminton either, according to them. Before they
no,
go to
she's just terrible at sports.
But her enthusiasm is
her enthusiasm is so fun. Yeah. I love that she invites Sawa to hit the ball and says, I'm gonna take this bat and beat those lousy balls to a pump. Like that's very funny. I also
like when she's like, come at me, ball, and they're like, it's been doing that or whatever.
But that also leads to a sweet scene where Sawa also, she can't hit the balls, but but it helps her relax, and she's able to just kind of joke around and play with the summons. So I thought that also led to a sweet scene. I also appreciate again like the idea of like the children are not entirely like their parents. That Mi-chan is like, into sports. She likes playing baseball and stuff, and not a musician like her dad. So yeah.
Yep, that's true. And I guess Haru was kind of athletic, but I don't think Rin was particularly athletic. So, although I guess Sora's not either. But...
she's a horse.
Yeah. She can run fast, perhaps, but yeah.
I think all we ever saw Haru do was trip people at the athletic
with a cord. He fought them sometimes.
Yeah. He took the martial arts therapy lessons.
Yeah, exactly.
Though Chizuru and Hibika are also following their family business of running the fashion, the clothes store.
The store.
And also, Mina is going to eventually run her, family's company, but like her hobby is different than Miji's, which I still think is interesting.
I mean, and like Chizuru, it's sort of a struggle for him, but he feels very different. Like he feels like he's really different than Mina and Ayame and Hibika.
Yeah.
Although he's kind of got the softer side of Ayame going on, I feel like
yeah,
the less like sort of manic and like
he just doesn't have the bombastic eccentricities. He's kind of more of a grounded person, but he still loves his family all the same. If he does have like a quirk, though, it's that he has very specific insults and curses he throws at people, like stub your toe on the edge of a dresser and fall over in pain.
Very good. A good insult. A good threat. Well, yeah, and he was really sassy when they showed up the first time at the store. So,
yeah. He seems like he's good at the more business side of running the shop.
Yeah.
Apparently, somebody has to be.
Side.
Yeah.
Because he's like, here, we need to set up the displays and do this.
In a family of 3 creatives, you got to have one person who is like at least handling the business end of things and can be more practical.
Well, their business must be doing well because they're like flying all over the place and have multiple shops. So,
and he thought that like Saba was just one of his Ayame's fans or customers who were like looking for him, which is why he got annoyed.
Apparently. So he must have quite the following, which isn't surprising because he's Ayame.
Yeah, you get the sense he is a little bit annoyed with like his dad's like reputation adulation when like, living with him as his son can be a struggle sometimes because of his eccentric flights of personality, but he also understands that his dad is a good guy and compassionate guy. Like we understand that Ayame took Mine on an overseas trip because her dad died and she was feeling down. So he was doing that to cheer her up. So, he understands and respects that. And he appreciates that. Like, that's why Sawa can sense that, even when he's, like, kind of criticizing his father, you can still get a sense of love and for him coming out of his, words and coming out of the way he talks about him.
I feel like going on an overseas trip to cheer somebody up is a very Ayame thing to do, though. It's like, just kind of scrambly, but, like, it's a good idea in theory, In Chapter 9, Sawa settles in at the summer home, and Chizuru tells her that Shiki specifically isn't there yet, and that they're not sure if he'll be coming. He doesn't normally come to these kinds of big family gatherings, and Sawa is disappointed, which leads into this weird dream that she can't quite remember about her mother not coming for her. But the next morning, Shiki arrives, although not in the best state. Apparently the trip with Hinata Soma at the wheel seems to have taken a lot out of him. And when Shiki's feeling a little better, Mina suggests that he escort Sawa to the aquarium, and they do go, alone, apparently. Nobody else wanted to go with them. Sawa apologizes for dragging him there, but he says it's all right. He visited there with his parents before, and as they watch the race, Sawa tells him how happy she is that he decided to come to the cottage. At the cottage, Sora finds an octopus, even though it's a lake house. And this threw me off for like quite a long time because I was trying to figure out if it was the same lake house and if it was the same place and whatever, but I've decided to not worry about it. Well... I mean, it's an amazing animal discovery if that's the case, because there's no freshwater octopi, are there? Can we have an animal break?
So maybe they just fill their own lakes with octopi.
They stock the lake with octopi. Maybe, you never know.
To do like backyard octopi fishing. I don't know.
Yeah, obviously.
They're
It's
a
one
rich
of those,
family.
like,
They do eccentric things.
Yeah, they can do whatever
like
they want.
lagoons or something, but they call it a lake.
Brackish. It's a brackish inlet. And an octopus was there. Sure, whatever. I'll let it slide this time. Because also Sora was like, fish are for eating, not for looking at, or something, which made me laugh a lot when they were talking about going to the aquarium. And while Shiki's at the aquarium, Mutsuki and Hinata talk about him and his struggle with the Soma family. There's no reason that he should have to feel bad or inferior. As long as you're aiming toward a brighter place, it's fine to go elsewhere. I think that's what Akito-san wishes for him too, Hinata says. On the way home from the aquarium, Shiki says that he had a good time as well, and Sawa worries and hopes that her mother will never find out and ruin this relationship. When they get home, Ryo arrives as well. They decide to play Go until dinner. They suggest that Shiki teach Sawa. I don't know if I can properly convey the joy of playing Go, but I'll make the effort, he says. I'll do my best too, Sawa says. I love his straight face in this scene. And I also like that Shiki, I think Chizuru and Ryo are there in the background. They're like, is he really doing this? Is he really? Like, it's really funny. Later, the kids set off fireworks wearing yukata that Hibika made for them. Shiki thanks Mutsuki for inviting him and thanks him for always thinking of him. Shiki tells Mutsuki that he's doing fine because he thinks, even if things get hard, I have people who will protect me, people who care about me. Being truly alone is different. Real loneliness is what I saw that day when I saw her. And we get to the real crux of the story in chapter 10. Actually, which first opens with a haunted house, because I guess Takaya likes haunted houses.
Call back, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's implied to be the same haunted house.
It does look like that, yes.
And the only one freaked out about it is Sawa. I love how Sora is just like clapping about Sawa's screens, like,
great show.
Very good, Sawachi. Beautiful screen.
Yeah.
Comments like, what, are you a director? You think you're directing?
This is supposed to be research for her classes, like, culture festival event that they're putting on or whatever. But then she's like, I just wanted to go or whatever. But so it's after summer break and the gang is hanging out at the haunted house, and talk has turned to the school festival. Sawa wonders if Shiki will be there, and she remembers his offer at the cottage to play Go with her anytime. After they leave, a girl calls to Sawa on the street. It's one of the former friends of hers from school. She tells Sawa that the reason they stopped hanging out with her was Sawa's mother. Sawa's mother saw them in the park and insulted and belittled them. And of course Sawa was deeply hurt by her friends back then, and her mother used this against her to belittle Sawa. Sawa is visibly upset. The former friend says that she's glad that Sawa seems to be having fun, at least, and leaves. Sawa runs home. Her mother is gone in her room and gone through her things. She notices the student president's last name on the flyer is Soma. Is it that Soma? She asks. Sawa doesn't understand or remember what her mother's talking about. Her mother gets a call and leaves. Later, Mutsuki and Hajime find Sawa outside their house, still shaking and sweating. Did my mother do anything to cause trouble for the Soma family? She asks. Mutsuki reveals that Shiki was there when Sawa fell and hurt her arm, and that her mother sued Shiki when he was little. She said that Shiki pushed her and demanded money from the Somas, but of course, it's not Sawa's fault. You don't have to cry, Hajime says as she sobs. Sawa cries herself to sleep at their house, and she wakes early in the morning with Kinu there working late. Kinu makes some tea and apologizes for making her cry, but Sawa is glad she knows the truth now. All the Somas has heard about her since it was a big deal at the time. Sawa wonders why her mother does these things, but Kinu tells her it's pointless to think about. I'm sorry to say this, but I think your mother would trample over those feelings and use them to her advantage. Sawa-san, your life is yours and yours alone. No one has the right to take it from you, not even your parents. And if somebody threatens to take it from you, it's okay to run away. You're more than allowed to protect yourself. We see the narration, expecting someone to smile and say thank you to their family when their family is stepping on them. That's just abuse. It's just a curse. Do you think I should speak with Shiki-kun? Sawa asks, and Kinu says, you don't have to ask me. You know exactly what kind of kid Shiki-kun is. Sawa replies with a small smile and says, yes, I do. It's the thing that happened. So now we finally learned how they're connected and why everybody seemed to know her and all the things that were happening.
She had more of a history than she realized, and
than she remembered.
Yeah, like it's heartbreaking
like
to just watch her
childhood connection.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
she's a big fan of the throat. Yeah, in the past, like much like Toru, a Soma child helped her in the past, and she didn't realize. But yeah,
she did remember, but she didn't know his name. All she had was his hat. In this case, Sawa like doesn't remember that this happened, although she has had some vague sort of like memories that have been getting stronger and stronger.
Yeah, but she's kind of suppressed, so she only can vaguely recollect it. She's only vaguely started to recollect it because she started interacting with the Somas again. But yeah, I mean, again, the pages in which like her friend tells her what happened, like her mother, how her mother like pushed her friend group away from her, and then confronting her mother in her room, and then like her telling about, we knew the Somas, like I sued the Somas in the past, and continuing on to like belittle her, and then seeing then Sawa relapse, like there are like pointed panels in which we have like close-ups of like her like feet, like basically the idea I think is like her looking down at the ground again, like scared to like look them in the eye and just ask them, like she's again, because she's afraid of she has caused trouble again. She's just lost a lot of the confidence she had gained in herself when she goes to confront them, to ask them if what her mother told her was really true, and she did sue them after the accident she had as a child. So that's also heartbreaking. But yeah, ultimately it does come back to that message of like, hey, a person, even if they are biologically related to you, if they are like just setting out to make your life miserable, if they are preventing you from living your best life, then you shouldn't feel obligated to them, and you should seek to protect yourself. You should make sure that you are living for your own happiness, and then not like feeling trapped by this abusive relationship that you're in. So I think that's a good point to touch upon. But yeah, like again, very, very visceral kind of paneling and imagery here that cuts like a knife, and certainly relates to a lot of experiences too that I can, really empathize and sympathize with. But man, there are some really horrifying panels, like when we have like Sawa's mom, like in the flashback, like just criticizing her old friends, and we see her kind of like in silhouette, and just a block of text behind her with like these blood spatter ink stains, and then it's just like a horrifying visual. And then seeing Sawa's expressions here, like her looks of horror and shock throughout the entirety of learning about all of this stuff, is also very, very painful, very heartbreaking to see. Like she just looks so distressed. It's just like destroying her world. And the paneling Takaya does here with a lot of these like interestingly angular like panels that like I think really convey like a big sense of anxiety and again stress and paranoia and just all this weird just fear and worry. So yeah, I think this is a really well done sequence in this chapter.
It's very Sawa's emotional state is very visceral. Like she's shaking, she's like sweating, she has this like big anxiety reaction, which we've seen a couple of times. I haven't like specifically talked about it, but I think this one is obviously the strongest. And you're right that I think that the angle, like the way that where she's running and like the things that are like in focus in the panels adds a lot of anxiety. Like when she's running up to the door, it's like two panels showing the door handle, but like once it's like closer and getting closer and closer. The dark like ink splatter, I feel like is a thing that Takaya used a lot in the kind of like later parts of Fruits Basket, and it's in a lot of these like dramatic scenes.
I think it's a good way to communicate emotional violence by communicating, hey, this is like an imagery you would associate like with physical violence, like this idea of like blood splatter. But this is like, there's no physical violence happening, but this emotional violence is as painful and is as terrifying. I will say, I feel like, I won't disparage them too much because they were little kids, but I feel like her friend group could have done a better job of telling her what the issue was and why they didn't want to be friends with her anymore. Like saying that, hey, put up your hand on your heart and think about that. I mean, I don't know. Like, how is she supposed to then relate that to, oh, it's your mother was being a real jerk to us, and that's why I don't want to be friends with you. Like, you made it feel like it was her fault.
Well, I think they probably assumed that, like, the mother was, like, saying stuff that Sawa had said, or that they were, you know,
they were
sharing the thing. Because, I mean, they were, like, 5, it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, they had no
They were
reason
little.
to, like, to
Yeah,
think
I
that,
can
like, oh,
understand
my
they
friend's
need that
mom said all these
information.
terrible things. It must mean my friend thinks that. Like,
yeah. If only they'd been just a little more explicit, Sawa maybe would have found out the truth earlier. Though, at that age, there also wouldn't have been much she could have done for it about it either way, even if she did know.
True. Because, like, the mom probably still would have been mean to the friends anyway. So, because she was just, I mean, she was just being mean to isolate Sawa, really, basically, is what happened. So,
No, like, just so cruelly sabotaging, like, her own kid's
it's so
social
depressing.
life. And
so sad.
putting her down for just, to what end? Just for a sense of control over her? It's just,
I guess.
yeah.
It's a level of abuse that I just, like, don't understand, basically. Like, I can't imagine how people can be, why you would be motivated to be that cruel, but so many people are, so I don't, like, it's not like it's uncommon, sadly.
No, it's sociopathic, but it, again, it feels real to me. I think it really is. Like, she just wants such control over her child that she demeans her to thinking, like, oh, you need to feel obligated to me, and you, oh, I'm the only one who will take care of someone like you because you're so worthless and no one else likes you. Something to that
I'm working
effect.
hard for
Again,
you, you know, and yeah.
very emotionally manipulated.
It definitely feels very real. Everything Sawa's mom does feels very legitimate and real. It's not like she's like overkill dramatic. It's just
yeah, she's like a less exaggerated version of Ren. She doesn't go out, like, she isn't as like hysterical in the sense that she'll like commit acts of physical violence. But as several characters note in when talking or referring to her, like, she is like a sociopath. Like, she is like one of the craziest people they met. Like, I think is in Hajime who says that. Like, she's one of the craziest people. No, Mutsuki, I think.
Yeah, it's the scene where they're talking about her and they're like, "What the hell?" Basically, but yeah. In a nutshell, that's basically what they said. But yeah, Sawa's mom is definitely a more like sort of everyday emotional abuse representation of everyday emotional abuse. It seems like not trying to stab people, at least.
Yeah, and definitely a narcissist in terms of like how
everything's
she
about her.
will push. She's very self-centered, and she pushes like the bullying for anything wrong that happens under people, like, and going so far as to like sue the Somas for like thinking, oh, my daughter got hurt, and I'm going to use this opportunity to wring some money out of you.
So parasitic. I mean, I feel like it's implied that she has that relationship with other people too. Like Sawa's like, one of her many boyfriends called her. I think it's coming up in the very next chapter. But I feel like, it's not like, I have a feeling that she's using a lot of people, not just the Somas. It was just another opportunity for her to use somebody else. Someone rich, in fact. So later Shiki's like, it's okay, that kind of thing happens all the time. But, you know. Anyway. It happens all the time to the Somas, at least.
But they even note that she was particularly ballsy for how how far she went to sue them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Well, speaking of which, the next chapter starts with Sawa's memory of that said accident. Sawa and her mom got all dressed up to hang out, but then her mom got a call from one of her many boyfriends, and she said she'd be right back, but then she was gone for hours, leaving Sawa alone near a set of stairs in the snow. She eventually slips on the stairs, and a much younger Shiki asks if she's all right. In the present, Shiki arrives at the Soma house, and they talk outside. Sawa apologizes that she forgot about what happened and for all the horrible things her mother did, and Shiki apologizes too. But of course, Sawa says that he has nothing to apologize for. He explains that he came to check on her, not because he came to check on her at that time, not because she was there for a long time, but because both times he saw her, she was crying. When he went to check on her, she had fallen. He got his father to call an ambulance, and he was worried. I was afraid that girl I saw would keep getting hurt again and again, he says. He's happy that she's enjoying herself now. Sawa starts to cry. There's so many things I can never get back, so much pain, so many tears. I can never ever forgive her, but even so, I'm tired of looking down and missing what's important, she thinks. Thank you for finding me, she says, taking Shiki's hand. I know I've caused you a lot of trouble, so I don't know if I can say this, but if you would still be my friend, I would be really happy. He closes his hands around hers and says with a gentle smile, I will, of course. Mitsuki and Hajime talk about some of the rough times in their family and that Sawa still has some rough times ahead. But, as Mitsuki reminds Hajime, Sawa isn't alone now. Sawa and Shiki return to the house and Sawa apologizes for imposing. Hajime says that he has something to apologize to her about too. At first I kind of had my guard up with you because your mom threatened Shiki and you were her daughter. But I should have known better. I know how hard it is to be stuck with a label like that. I've seen it all my life. For that, I'm really, really sorry. I was wrong. Everyone's gotten a load off their chests, and things are bubbly, but not for long. Asawa is harassed by the landlady again when she returns home. Once she gets in the door, she screams in frustration. She hasn't made it out of the situation yet, but she's not looking down anymore. The chapter closes on the gang inviting Shiki to the school festival, and he, of course, thinks of Sawa. Also, the landlady, I don't like, I'm not happy about her.
Yeah. But,
being always guilt-tripping Sawa, and the mom is probably like, oh, it's so hard to raise a child, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, anyway.
I mean, the frustration of, like, someone who's seen only one side of the story, like, chastising someone not knowing that they're the victim in the abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But also, just a prodding landlord type is also a very...
Just generally a bad situation. Yeah, that's true.
But Sawa's scream, another thing that, a great illustration of just, like, her frustration there. Yeah, but it's also very satisfying to see, like, after letting that all up, she kind of, just opens her eyes, or she picks her head up, she wipes her tears, and then she's like, she's not going to let, like her mom, she's not going to let all of these injustices in her life keep her down, keep her from trying to live her best life anymore, which I think is just really satisfying to see.
Yeah, I like that about her character in general. Like, even though she recognizes that she's struggling, but she also has this sort of like self-awareness, and like introspection that even though like she wants to be better, like she doesn't want to feel this way, she doesn't want to look down, and that things are getting better, that she's not alone, but she's not out of the woods yet. So it's I appreciate her sort of like self-awareness, I guess, as a character. Yeah. It's not like she's kind of always worrying or always like everything's going to be great. It's like not one or the other. It's she recognizes that she feels both ways and has mixed feelings about the situation. Yeah.
She's matured and now can have just more self-awareness and can also be more confident and like, hey, you know, there are bad times that are facing me in my life, but I know there are good things so long as I make sure that I take time to see them and take time to engage with other people, which I think is nice. And I also really appreciate the conversation that Mitsuki and Hajime have, like saying that and acknowledging, hey, like things are not going to just immediately get easy for Sawa. In fact, she might not be able to completely escape from her mother for a long time, if ever. But, you know, even if her life is not immediately going to get easy, you know, so long as that there are people in her life to help her, she doesn't have to do it alone. Like, she can still live a happy life, which I like. I like that acknowledgement that, like, the problems that she's facing are not just going to go away. Like, she's still going to have to deal with the situation, especially, like, you know, as someone still in high school, she's still going to have to live with her mother for a foreseeable future. But, like, now she can start thinking about, like, a future for herself and what she wants, which I appreciate, again, that self-actualization she has.
Chapter 12 opens with Ruiko announcing that the Soma Club will show their research to the world at the Culture Festival, or whatever. And then Principal Makoto Takei is always there to freak out, too, of course. We briefly flash back to Sora telling Sawa the good news that Shiki will be coming to the festival and suggests introducing him as her boyfriend. And she's like, what? No, while her friend's eyes sparkle with joy. The student council checks things out at the festival. Riku stops some dudes from harassing a girl, and they check out the acoustic haunted house that Sora's class put on, etc., before everyone is allowed to enter the festival. Sawa goes to take a break in the council room, finds Hajime taking a nap, but not on the floor this time, and also Mutsuki. Maybe he's grown a little bit as a character, too. She and Mitsuki talk about the family. Hajime will be going back to his hometown after school, and Sawa asks if he'll be lonely. They were always apart, but their hearts will stay close even if they're physically apart. He says that Shiki has been through a lot. There's a lot of drama and bad blood in the family, and he tried to avoid everything because of it. Mitsuki remembers the nasty notes left about Shiki's mother and wonders why he should deal with the abuse and be so alone. Chizuru, Ryo, and Shiki show up at the school festival, so Sawa goes to meet them, and while walking out, she worries, "The present moment is far too kind. I wonder if the other me, who looks down, is scared that the moment will be lost or destroyed. I want to be a bright person who's always laughing. I'm going to take the other me with me. We'll start again, one step at a time." Shiki's also a little nervous to see Sawa, and when they meet, the chapter ends on the narration, "Like that, one step at a time, we'll start again." And chapter 13 is, I think, kind of a direct continuation. So the last chapter of Fruits Basket Another came out separately from the others, much later, a few years later. So chapter 13 opens later in the fall at Shiki's school, and Chizuru invites him to the group picnic that they have in the fall, that the Soma kids have in the fall. Sawa's coming to help out at Ayame's store again, so of course they could take this opportunity to invite her as well. Shiki blushes and Chizuru teases him, impatient for him and Sawa to start dating. But like Mina before, Ryo puts a stop to it in the name of romance. Ryo comments that things have started to change for Shiki. He asks if Shiki has found his compromise. When Shiki returns home, he finds a crumpled paper that's simply an announcement, but he was worried that it had started again. When he was a child, someone had been stashing horrible notes in his things about his mother. One day, Mitsuki finds out and tells Shiki to tell his dad about it. "Shiki, the next time something like this happens, I want you to tell me. If you don't want to tell me, you can tell someone else, someone who cares about you. Remember that you have a lot of people in your life who care about you." He remembers when Ren threatened him with a knife. And he thought that it had started again, the criticism, the slander, blame, and ridicule surrounding his mother. He remembers Ren saying, "Your mother should spend the rest of her life crawling around with her face in the dirt, apologizing to the world for what she's done." He remembers after Ren attacked him and Kido stopped it, Mitsuki and Hajime try to comfort him, though Mitsuki is also crying. His mother did tell him about the mistakes that she'd made and how she tried to atone for them. She never joined any family events, but dropped off Shiki so that he could be a part of them. Later, Shiki does invite Sawa to the picnic, and it turns out that Sawa's mom confiscated her phone, so they can't exchange information. Shiki later asks if she's okay, and she says that she is because she has people she can talk to about it. She says she wants to hear more about him, too, and he smiles. When Shiki gets home, he learns his mother will be home late again. He overhears their maids talking about Aikido. Shiki thinks that no matter how involved she is, or how she tries to make things right, her life never changes. It's eternity. A curse of nothing being allowed to change. He gets angry and punches the bathroom mirror. At Sawa's, her mother's made a huge mess and left. Sawa despairs about that briefly, but perks up because the picnic is today. When she meets up at the Soma house, she talks about how talk turns to how Shiki has been joining in family meetings, and that Sawa finally realizes that he's a big deal, but of course he denies that. Other kids start to arrive, and a box of napkins scatter in the wind while they set up the picnic, which gets Shiki and Sawa semi-alone after catching a napkin together. Sawa says that everyone is happy that Shiki's there. He explains that in their parents' generation, it wasn't like that. His mother was a big part of that. He says his mother thinks that it's only right for her to pay for what she did, but obviously he loves her. From his perspective, she's his kind, loving mother. They learned games together from another familiar Soma and read stories together with his dad. She learned many things. His mother learned many things for the first time after he came around and thanked him. "My mother has always cared for me, and my cousins keep me safe, but I feel like choosing one side would be disrespectful to the other, so I'm always trying to find a compromise. But I decided it's time to stop thinking like that." He thinks, "If you insist that it's eternity and that nothing changes, I'll take those ideas and turn them over. I'll change myself. I'll change it myself. I have to make myself into that kind of person, or I won't be able to protect this tenderness." He asks Sawa if he can call her by her first name from now on. And we cut away to Mitsuki and Hajime, the chorus that they are, talking about the future, and relieved to see Shiki getting close to someone. "I hope we can improve each other and be our own best selves," Mitsuki says. With the picnic set up, everyone gathers to eat. Shiki remembers apologizing to his parents about the mirror and promising to pay them back. They said they wanted to remember the time that Shiki's feelings exploded and suggest leaving the mirror broken. They were both smiling so happily, he thinks. I thought, can't they let it go? And that's the end of Fruits Basket Another.
At least for now. Who knows? There may be.
Yeah, I don't know. There may be another. Oh, you did it.
Yeah.
You can't resist.
No. So opportunity and took it.
Yes. But yeah, I don't know. There's theoretically it's like on hold, but like theoretically it's done. It's kind of hard to tell if there's ever going to be another chapter, but
yeah, I mean, I could see the direction of another chapter or two would be in some way Shiki's attempt to try and repair his mother's relationship to the rest of the Soma family.
mm-hmm.
There is the comment about how Hajime and Musashi note that they don't think that it would ever happen. Like, they note that, oh, you know, like, Akito enjoys spending New Year's with Toru. She looks forward to that every year. So, you know, maybe she's fine with the way things are now. But it seems like Musuki really is not. He wants his mother to live a happier life and to be reconnected with the family. Because he's seen, like, how self-sacrifice she's been to atone for what she had done and how good a mother she has been to him. And so I could see some follow-up to that idea, because that final shot of Shiki in chapter 13, it's not quite a smile, and that final thought of his, can they let it go, to me I could see a double meaning of, like, not just the can't they let it go of, like, not forgetting, like, the thing they're proud of and, like, Shiki's first emotional outburst, but also symbolically not being able to let go these scars from the past, these past moments of, like, times when we have hurt each other, or times in which, like, you know, there has been trauma inflicted, things that can't be forgiven or taken back. Like, these ideas of, like, well, we can't like heal from this. We can't let go of, like, these things we are so preoccupied with and still haunt us to this day. And I think that still haunts Akito in particular to this day. The things that she did in the past and that she's still trying to atone for. So yeah, I could see Shiki trying to help his mother, like, reconnect with the family. And I would be interested in reading a follow-up to that if Takaya does take the story in that direction. But I really did enjoy the chapter, though, because it was nice to see how much Akito has grown and, like, matured in the responsibility she's taking upon herself as head of the family, and trying to be respectful and mindful of, like, the people she had hurt in the past by, like, staying away from them so as to not, you know, perhaps re-trigger their trauma or cause conflict. But I also appreciate, like, Shiki's perspective that, you know, this is hurting his mother, like, self-isolating, and also, you know, his mother's still bearing the brunt of all this criticism no matter what she does, whether she gets involved with something or stays away. And he wants to, like, again, help repair her relationship to the rest of the family. So I thought it was a very, very welcome chapter just to learn about all that.
I think, like, it's a good, really, like, I mean, at this point I guess it's kind of like almost like a supplement to the end of the series, but it was nice to, like, get all that focus on Shiki, and especially really on Akito and Akito's continuing struggles with the family, because I think, like, at the end of the series, like the end of Fruits Basket, we're left with, like, a positive outlook on what's going to happen to Akito, but it's not clear, right? And so on the one hand, I was sort of disappointed that, like, you know, people hadn't let things go, like, especially, like, Ren, because, I mean, what's her skin in the game anyway at this point? I mean, she's just
like, spiteful.
Yes.
Unfortunately, Ren is just, I think, mentally ill. So,
yes.
like, she's just full of vitriol. And we saw she was about to stab her own grandson with a knife, and Akito had to protect her. It's, like, a horrifying scene. But we see that Akito, like, the fact that Ren is still around means that Akito is still trying, even though Ren probably will never improve or, you know, become a kinder person. She's still trying to help her mother have some sort of relationship with her mother. So it's a tragic thing, but it's also, it's a difficult thing that Akito is dealing still with this old guard of the Soma family that still chastises the decisions she has made, and is still, like, aligned with Ren's faction outlook and what the Soma family should
even to
be.
the point where it seems like it's affecting, like, sort of family politics. Like, they said, like, Ren came, the gossip, the the like Shiki's
Ren.
family's maids or were like gossiping that Ren came to the meeting and that's why
Yeah.
it's drawing on or whatever. So I'm
Mhm.
sure there's still a lot of drama.
Yeah, and it shows show that also ties into the message and commentary on like how, you know, even though Asawa is still going to have to deal with like her mother, you know, during her life and still will have hardships during her life. Like, you know, things are improving and have improved for a lot of the Soma family, but there's still more to the journey of change that needs to be done. Still more to the journey of healing that needs to be done in the family. And this next generation, Shiki, perhaps at the forefront, will probably be key to continuing the repairs of like what their parents' generation started.
And Shiki basically seems like committed to that. Like that's kind of like his. It seems like that's what he found. Like he spends time with the family, but with his cousins and stuff, like with all the kids. But also, seems like he's also spending time with like doing the family, like observing family business and stuff like that. So he's kind of trying to like bridge both things. And
yeah, he mentions that he's trying to be sort of a go-between. He's kind of living between these two worlds, and it's exhausting to him. But he, you know, he can't just let it go in his own way. Like this is something that he wants to make change happen somehow to improve things for his mother and repair her relationship with the family. I also like the detail though that like Akito, even though she is self-isolated, she always made it a point to leave Shiki with relatives with the rest of the family. Like she doesn't, even though she feels that she needs to atone and self-isolate, she doesn't want to rob Shiki of like his connections with his family because Shiki is like, you know, blameless in all this. Which again, I think, and also just the details of like Akito, you know, learning to play games and learning bedtime stories, you know, to play with Shiki, you know, even though she didn't know that at first, like she went out and learned right alongside him. Like that also was kind of a touching.
Yeah, I like the panel of her and Shiki apparently learning the games from Toru and one of her kids.
Yeah, because I think Akito didn't know. We talked, I think, a lot when we talked about Fruits Basket about how isolated Akito was.
Right.
Like, she had a couple toys and stuff, but yeah, and there's like a little flashback to that in that scene, too.
Yeah, and the reason that Akito probably didn't know, like, any games or bedtime stories is because she probably wasn't read them or played with as a child by either of her parents, so...
Yeah, well, her father was
dead.
Yeah,
her father died when she was really young, and her mother was Ren, so...
her mother was yeah, exactly. Yeah. And probably I feel like the sort of like the Soma maids, like the old guard maids, I think they, you know, somewhat entertained Akito and like probably, you know, educated her to a certain extent, but I don't think they played games with her. Like,
it seems like she was treated as like the head of the family at a really young age rather than
like a child,
any kind of like real childhood.
Yeah. So I like that scene where, and it's a nice sentiment too, where Akito thanked Shiki for getting to experience things with him and stuff like that. It's very cute. But yeah, I don't know. It's sort of disappointing that I guess, and I do think like sort of the message is things don't necessarily change. Things can change, but not necessarily easily, which is a message from Furuba and Fruits Basket and other. And I think like that shows a lot in these scenes with the way that Akito has to deal with the family or feels like she has to atone for things she did.
Yeah.
It takes time and some things may not change no matter how hard you try, but like it's up to you to choose how to live your life and also to what happiness like you want to seek out in the world and for yourself. Even though Akito is still, you know, dealing with a barrage of like kind of animosity within the Soma family, we see glimpses of her smiling, like at Shiki, like even when bearing the brunt of abuse from the rest of the family. Like we see that she we see happy family scenes of like her spending time with Shiki and with Shigure. So we get the sense that her life, you know, even though it's hard, she still is finding those moments of joy and happiness that she's taking comfort in. So Shiki wants better for her, but I think she might feel content with the way things are.
Yeah, actually kind of like not the stuff with the like old guard of the family who are terrible, but like the sort of compromise that Akito's obviously sort of come up with for like the rest of that like Soma generation, in like, you know, not like forcing herself into the like social situations with people who would understandably maybe not want to be around her, like, but you know, making sure her kid has the chance to like socialize with his relatives, and that all the other Somas obviously aren't holding anything from Akito against Shiki, like, even the ones who are most abused by Akito, like their kids, like obviously aren't stopping their kids from befriending Shiki.
Yeah, it's very nice. I feel like that's kind of like the direction that I expected from Fruits Basket. Like to eventually not hold things against Akito, but certainly not, you know. And it's like what Hajime said too when he apologized to Sawa. It's like Shiki isn't Akito. Like Shiki didn't do any of these things. So yeah,
I think it's perfectly understandable why like someone like say Rin wouldn't want to
hang out with Akito.
Spend any time with Akito socially, but like obviously Rin and Haru's children are, you know, on good terms with Shiki.
I just like Mutsuki being so protective of Shiki too.
Yes.
Like looking out for him and like giving him advice and telling him that, hey, there are people who care about you and will help you. Like even if like you don't want to turn to me specifically. And also like crying on behalf of him later when he learns up more of his deal. Like he interesting. I feel like he takes off
you're freaking both of us out. This isn't helping.
Of like how emotional he gets about the situations of other people. But yeah, very caring.
I think it's a very strong like part of his character that comes through well. Like he, like doesn't. I don't know. He kind of like wants justice and like wants like things to be right for the people that he cares about and wants to make sure that they're cared for and safe. And so it's just nice. Yeah, he's more upset in the situation than she is. And yeah, Hajime is like, you're freaking us out, which is true. It's cute. But yeah, it's touching how much he cares about Shiki and how it seems like he always has. Like he's kind of always tried to like make sure Shiki's involved with the family and stuff like that too. Invite him to things. On a lighter note though, I enjoyed because we haven't talked about any other things in the last volume, but as they're preparing for the sort of like culture festival, I like that Hajime like absolutely didn't want his parents or Hanajime to come, which was really funny. She's like, no, don't come. It's really cute. Mitsuki tried to convince him earlier, I think, that because it was going to be his last festival, but he was like, no, absolutely not. Too embarrassing. I feel like you know exactly the kind of parents that Kyo and Toru would be. They'd definitely be like the doting types, I guess.
Very, very embarrassing for him, probably. And Saki would be very noisy too.
Yes. Well, she would report back everything also.
Yeah.
So, yeah. For just as embarrassing as having his parents come, of course. There was the Soma family history that was presented. Ruriko's last stand. In the series so far, at least. In the series as it stands today.
I love that Takei like stole pictures of Yuki from the exhibit. Like he appears out of the curtains and he's like criticizing Noriko, but like we see he's doing it while the photos are slipping out of his coat. It's like very funny.
Like, what the heck is with that? Like all the kids are like, what is up with that? It's really funny. Like Mutsuki's kind of like whatever. Like so far his opinion of Takei has always been like whatever, like I'll just use my dad's influence to like get what I want, basically.
No, he takes it in good humor.
Yes,
whereas Hajime is a little more mortified, a lot more annoyed.
I mean, yeah, that also seems like Hajime's sort of character. It's more just like no nonsense all the time, at all times, right?
I love Sora giving Sawa advice about like introducing Shiki as her boyfriend, and like when Sawa is saying, "Oh, I don't want to cause trouble for him," and she's like screams at him that you, sorry, idiot, and the sort of whoever speaks first is the but just such into bombast and intensity. It's very. I thought it's very funny how seriously he takes it.
Sora's lines, like I said, like the one where she's like fish are for eating, not for looking at. Like all her like screaming lines are always really funny. Like she adds good comedic relief.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like insisting. I feel like there's a point where she like is giving finger guns about something too, but I forget. Maybe that was the same time where she was like, why don't you introduce him as your boyfriend? And then the friends are like, ooh, it's really funny. But yeah, Sawa was like, no, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. Complete denial. They're both in complete denial. So. Oh, I also liked that Hinata had Shiki for dinner when Akito and Shigeru were busy. Like Hinata's involved in the family. Yeah. It's cute too. We got to see her come back. We talked about her earlier a little bit, but I thought it was nice that they were spending time together.
Yeah.
She referred to brothers plural, I think, at one point.
Yeah.
So does that mean she has a little brother too?
It seems like there might be. Yeah. It seems like it's implied that. Are there other things specifically from the last volume or the last chapter we want to talk about, or should we talk about some like overall themes and things?
So the line, I think it's Kinu says about like how it's okay to run away and protect yourself. Not to be the person who always brings up Arakawa, but that reminded me of a line from Silver Spoon where like one of the main characters like beating himself up about how he feels like he always runs away from things, and the other character is like, it's like you seem to view running away as a bad thing, but it's not always. You get new experiences, and it's okay to run away in order to live and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
That's true. Always bringing up Arakawa. Always bringing Arakawa into this. I mean, that's legitimate. I mean, I also love her, so that's fine.
Yeah. It's a line that really struck me in Silver Spoon, so it really struck me to see a similar sentiment here. So.
Absolutely. Very equivalent message, I think. In terms of like, reframing the idea of running away is often seen as like a cowardly thing, but no, running away from a situation that's like too hard to handle can be just the first step towards entering yourself into a new experience that can help you.
Or just letting go of something that hurts you.
Yeah, that's
just getting away from like something that's like just making it hard for you to even live as a person. So.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple times in the story where you can kind of feel like, and I remember feeling this reading Fruits Basket 2, where it's kind of like the character is talking, but it's really Takaya talking. And I think like that line specifically that Kinu's saying is like one of those times. There was like a narration earlier that was kind of reminded me of that. I can't remember which one exactly, but and some of the stuff that Hajime says, like the first time when he's like, it's a curse, like a family that just like takes advantage of you isn't you don't have to be beholden to them or whatever. I kind of think that like Kinu line is sort of Takaya putting her ideas and her feelings about how you should react to abuse into the story, in a positive message, I think. Shall we turn our discussion to the overall story? We've like gone through all the chapters in a bit of detail. I think we touched on some overall themes and stuff so far, but I want to talk about a couple of things. There's something that I noticed that I want to talk about that wasn't really necessarily related to the story, but I like that the volumes were structured with the characters, like the character on the cover waking up. That's like the same way the on the inside illustration, which is similar to Fruits Basket. They also have this, if you're looking at my notes, they have this like sequence of images of the scene where Sawa fell. And at first, the first one is like in the first volume is her boots. The second one is kind of a close up on her head, and the third one is this close up of like Shiki checking on her. And I noticed them, but I was like, "What is this?" And then once you kind of see all of it put together and kind of like see, or like we get to that point in the story, it's like, "Oh, I see." So it kind of like builds up to
the progression of her memory, like she's remembering more and more of what happened.
Yeah, that whole progression is good because it's kind of like. it's very like vague, but then there's that very specific memory that she had, or like the dream that she has in like the second volume, I think, where it's like you see what happened, and if you know what it is, then you know. But at first, it's like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? It could be like she and Shiki met in the past or something, but it's much darker than that. Later, it turns out. So, in terms of like the overall kind of visual style, it does very much look like it's definitely like you can tell it's Takaya's work. It has a very similar style to like the end, especially of Fruits Basket, if not even like more evolved. Like there's a lot of texturing. I like the use of some of the space and like the types of paneling. We specifically talked about the part earlier with the when Sawa learns about what happened with Shiki in the past, and the panels are all kind of like at these dynamic angles instead of being straight and stuff like that. But yeah, I think overall, like a very Takaya piece of work, I would say.
She really likes to use long vertical panels too, particularly in spreads. And I do like that the art, it feels like it gives the art a little more room to breathe, and not it doesn't feel quite as packed together as it did, especially in early Fruits Basket, where I felt like it was a lot denser. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a much more confident like layout, I think, just like her whole like art style now.
Yeah, and a lot more emphasis compared to early on at least, but very similar to later on the visual storytelling, over including a lot of dialogue or words. Although she does make great use, as we mentioned before, of like dense dialogue, dense words for great effect, particularly in the scenes where like
with the mom.
Yeah, Sawa's mom. Yeah, it's just like overwhelmingly ranting at people.
Same with Ren. There's a scene with Ren too where there's like a ton of dialogue.
Yeah,
the one where it's like
and the third the lettering in that page is also great with how the lettering is distorted and at angles too. Like that was a fantastic job that they did for that. But
there were some good choices by the letter, I felt, in general. Like I noticed when I was reading Fruits Basket in Japanese, so I don't have this one in Japanese. I don't have Fruits Basket and other in Japanese, but when I was reading just like manga in general in Japanese, I found like there was more like different fonts used. This is like getting very sort of technical, but to convey different things and like different ways that different people talk. And I felt like in the way that things tend to be printed in English, there tended to be less, I noticed. And so I felt like in this sort of in Fruits Basket and other, there was like more like different, like distorted or different fonts that are used at different points. And so I think that added to the overall like visual style, which was nice.
Yeah, and they do use different dialogue fonts too, depending on a character's mood or like emotional states.
Yeah, Sawa in particular has at least two different ones that I can think of offhand. There's this sort of like voice wavering one. And
when Sawa's like screaming in the haunted house, that uses a very distinct different font from anything else used in the rest of the series.
Well, haunted house screaming is different than regular screaming, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it is so striking that Takaya very confidently will not fill in backgrounds and just make use of negative space of panels. Like, you made this a note, but like definitely, I feel like one of the most striking times was like after Sawa got the revelation from her mother that like she had sued the Somas in the past, and we see the turn the page, and we just see Sawa, hands just covering her face, and the entirety of the room, it's just gone white. It's just blank space. Like she's closed herself off from the rest of her surroundings again.
Yeah.
It's just a great way to emphasize that. And Sawa herself, like how she's rendered in that with like kind of this faded look to show that she's kind of not even that further signifies the fact that she's not even feeling present in this moment because she's just lost in her grief and anguish. Like that's done very well, and there are like several other great moments of that where Takaya just lets like the character speak for itself and not doesn't worry too much about filling in details in the background or
adding more dialogue, like where Sawa kind of, after her mom yells at her and she kind of like shuts down or she's like screaming internally, there's like just a bunch of panels that are very visual. That's like volume 2, I think. There's after one that I liked that was kind of a new thing for. I mean, Takaya did use like negative, like as in reversed images, sometimes in Fruits Basket, like a couple of times. But one that stood out to me this time was Sawa hears Chizuru talking to his parents on the phone and realizes how much he loves them. And then when you turn the page, it's this like negative image of Sawa standing there, like she's also sort of like just worried about thinking about her mom and not present in the moment. There's like a lot that's communicated in that panel that's not said, like it's not said in her dialogue or her thoughts or whatever. It's very interesting. I feel like that's kind of a new thing to really like heavily lean on visuals to say things. There was like a lot more writing in general in Fruits Basket, I think, like in terms of dialogue and stuff filled in, things explained.
There was also a lot more side commentary when it came to humor too in the original Fruits Basket, I remember. Like we have like big gags and the characters to be commenting on top of those gags. And I didn't notice that as much in another. Like she didn't really have as much like a Tsukomi type asides in that took up space in the story as much.
I mean, overall, like there's funny stuff, but overall it's doesn't lean into comedy as much as Fruits Basket did. Also, in general, I think in the story, like there's the characters pick each other.
Moments,
yeah. Well, and then there's like the whole Ruriko and
I think Ruriko and Sora, Takei and Sora are like the chief comedy characters, but a lot of the characters are pretty lighthearted, so there's some good comedic moments and to complement the darker elements of Sawa's story and that harshness. So I think it's a good balance tonally. Yeah. And I don't feel like the series veered into like an extreme where comedy felt out of place or like it just took a sudden swerve from one tonal extreme to another.
I feel like there wasn't even a lot of like Takaya used to use a lot of those like kind of outline figures, or like we were calling them like ghosty figures. There was like a couple panels that had them, but not that many. Not as many, I think, as in overall in Fruits Basket. So even then kind of like removing the characters that much from their like the physical space where the scene is happening didn't happen as much. Like they weren't as abstracted, I guess. We talked about this earlier about how like really the draw of reading Fruits Basket and others for like people who read Fruits Basket and liked it. And I feel like we did get to learn, even though the story focuses on Sawa and the children of like the, you know, the generation of characters from Fruits Basket, we did get to learn a lot of things about what happened to characters from Fruits Basket. So I tried to like catalog some of them. Like for example, Makoto Takei becoming principal, very important, and Megumi became a teacher. I do like that they all live in Shigure's house. As well. It was nice when they like showed up to the house the first time and you see that like seen the house from the outside. I was like, oh, we're back here. It's like we're coming home. It's very cute.
Yeah.
And of course they fix the roof. Very important.
I like how, you know, there's no drama cliff.
Yeah, there's no drama cliff. Yes.
That cliff really did only exist for drama.
Pretty much. It existed for drama.
Toru in danger explicitly.
Exactly. Well, it was the inciting incident and like almost the end incident. Like almost the it was the climax.
I want to know the logistics of how they got rid of the entire cliff.
Just
I think
you've seen
Pompoko.
Yeah, they just scooped it all out with with like digger trucks.
They used the little landscape tool in Zoo Tycoon and pulled the ground down flat.
Pushed it down. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened. That's how development works. I was really happy that Megumi's wish for Hana came true. We talked about that earlier too. And that Momo and Momiji know each other. Most important reveal.
Yeah.
Who cares? All the other characters were like, they're going to be fine. Like, Hyo and Toru are going to be fine. You know, Machi and Yuki are going to be fine. Haru are probably going to be fine, question mark, and whatever. But Momiji we didn't know, but we know that he has a relationship with his sister. Isn't that great?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That was the one thing that the ending of Fruits Basket left me wanting. And I'm very happy they
What about
touched upon
Momiji? What about Momiji?
it.
Well, now we know. We know that everything's fine, and he is a child, and it's great, I guess. And
Mm.
he probably showed off his girlfriend or whatever to see.
Yeah.
I like that Hinata also hangs out with the kids. We got to see Hinata, and we heard that Hiro has another baby brother. It's cute.
Mhm.
Hinata's apparently just as clumsy as her mom.
Well, she drives like a crazy person, apparently.
Yeah.
And then she also got drunk at the summer house, which was really funny. They're like, "Why are you drinking so much in front of these children?" or whatever. You're teasing her. It's funny. And we learned, most importantly, that Shigure is still annoying and teases his son. I feel like we did learn a lot about Aikido. Aikido's life is
Yeah.
kind of a bummer, but she does seem happy with Shiki, and like she's doing the things that she feels are right in her life, so that's good. But it seems like there's still a lot of family drama. Ren's still crazy, as we learned.
Yeah.
So there's that. There was no old maid.
No, I mean, I imagine this has to be like a 20 plus years in the future, so I don't know how old she was.
She was old, though.
I would be surprised if she was still around. Or at least
She
still
was-
working.
She said she
at
was
the
too old to
place.
change, so
At the
presumably
very
she
least, she should have
fairly old.
retired.
Yeah. They still had the other maids that were basically a substitute for the rest of the maids, so that were talking about Aikido, like with an earshot of Shiki and gossiping. So, I'm trying to remember if there was other stuff. Oh, I think Kyo and Toru had 3 kids. Also, there's
Yeah.
Hajime, and then the baby brother who we saw, and then a sister, little sister.
Mhm.
Oh, we didn't talk about Michi Manabe that much. She was in a couple scenes. But she
Yeah.
also mentioned having a younger brother who asked her to not be so silly like their father.
Yeah.
Apparently.
But she said that she's going to bestow the title of Meat Angel onto him. It's a funny
Is that
comment. She also mentions about her mother, loves, they in their family, the 29th day
Yes.
of every month is meat day. They eat meat morning to night because, of course, 29 Japanese is, Niku. Yeah, but of course she's very sad in February where there's no 29th day, but except for leap years, which is also made a comment. Oh, your mother must love leap years.
I feel like you.
I like that.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I like that family is like really close to Yuki and Machi's family to the point where like Mitsuki says he like basically sees Michi as an older sister.
Yeah. Also very similar to Kakeru in personality too.
Yeah, pretty outgoing. Not quite as silly, but
No,
a
I
little
think
bit silly.
Mutsuki takes a little more of those traits.
Yeah, Muski is somehow kind of like Kakeru, especially with his chaotic good tendencies. I feel like where he was like, get these people together, give you this fake form that says we're doing a school event, and that's why you're gone or whatever, and like all this other stuff. I feel like that's something Kakeru would do. He'd
Yeah,
just
the
be
fake
like,
form
problem
especially was
solved.
like
Yes,
it's a very Kakeru move, I think.
yes. I appreciate.
He's just like, my uncles are great, and Yuki's like, ugh.
I love all my uncles. And then it's like just Ayame and Kakeru like cackling in the background.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we learned that it's not like Kyo's relationship with his father improved, and Hajime also hates him, which I can root for because he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
It's okay because he has Grandpa Kazuma.
Yeah, Grandpa Kazuma.
Yeah.
He's the greatest grandpa. Best Grandpa Kazuma.
Yeah.
He used to be best dad Kazuma, now he's best Grandpa Kazuma.
Yeah. It's like the only good still living dad in Fruits Basket.
Yeah. Actually.
Yeah, probably. Still living dad. I wonder what Momiji's relationship was like with his father. It seems like he's like working for their company. It's not clear, but
Yeah, I wonder how much of their relationship has been. Like, does Mumiji's mom know about it now?
yeah,
now
I don't
that,
know. An interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if Momiji inherited the company and is close with his sister now. That's not really a secret that he's...
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, his sister knows that he's her brother, so does their mom know? Yeah.
Maybe.
Otherwise, it'd be like, why did you have this random Soma child inherit the company? Like,
Suspicious. I mean, maybe they lied to her. Maybe they're just like, this is my other Soma child. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. Like,
I mean, he didn't like have an antagonistic relationship with his father. It was just not very close because
his father abandoned him.
Essentially chose his mother over him.
Yes, and sister and little sister. Machi doesn't have a relationship with her parents either. That came up in a side discussion of the Musuki and Hajime chorus at one point. I enjoyed when the role transitioned to just like talking about what's happening later in the story. It's like they're doing it again.
Just commenting on what's going on with Sawa and then re-emphasizing and the themes of the story.
Yeah, exactly. Their chorus. I said it. I said it once and I'll say it again. Do we want to talk about themes now? Any big themes that we noticed in the story? And then we'll get into questions. I have some questions for y'all, and then we have questions from our listeners.
I think we addressed a lot of the themes. They are very similar to Fruits Basket. It is, again, breaking free.
It's a curse, and it's okay to run away.
Yeah, like an abusive family is like a curse, and you shouldn't feel bound by obligation, like blood ties, to stay in a situation that's making you miserable. You should take ownership of your own life and strive to live for your own happiness and find a community, find people that will love you for you and will be supportive of you, and then you can be supportive of too. And that is something that'll help you grow in life and help you get to where you want to be and live your happiest life.
Yeah, Sawa's sort of like relationship with Shiki at the end, I think, is a good representation of kind of like the latter part of what you said, where like that you can also, it's not just about like you breaking the cycle of your own abuse, but you can also help other people, and I think Sawa's a good representation of that too.
Yeah, reaching out to help other people is in a way to help yourself as well grow as a person. Like forming connections and like looking beyond yourself to see the needs of other people and make an effort to help them. That's an important thing to do because we live communally. Like we live as part of a community, and so no one can truly live all alone. Like it is important to have people in your life that you can rely on. It's also important to be a person that other people can rely on, even if you're worried that you might not live up to that. Like in the end, there are things that you can do to help other people that they will really appreciate, even if you don't realize it immediately. And it's also important. And it's also important not to just live life just apologizing for yourself or all the mistakes you made constantly. When people are making an effort to help you, you should meet them at their level, meet them eye to eye, and be grateful by saying thank you. And that's a more healthy way to approach like working collaboratively with other people than fretting or fearing that you're going to mess things up. Like you should take the help of others in order to help you grow and help you on your journey to be better.
I guess another exploration of like needing to grow a community, but not needing to not be isolated. Like that's kind of Sawa's. She was like, I was looking around and missing everything, but that also kind of carries through with Shiki being concerned about Akito and the way that she isolates herself from the family, and that's not maybe like the best way to live or the nicest way to live. So there's this sort of like just isolating yourself isn't a solution, but finding other people is going to, and building a community with other people is going to be helpful in your life kind of theme.
If you close yourself off to seeing the world around you, you'll miss good things in the world, and you'll miss people that want to reach out to you and want to be a part of your life. Like Sawa had been doing for the longest time, and until it was pointed out to her that hey, there were people who were waiting and wanting to reach out to her.
They wanted to eat lunch with her and be her friend.
Yeah.
Other than than themes. Do you have any like favorite characters or favorite like parts of the series? Favorite things we learned about our friends from Fruits Basket?
I mentioned before that, I really
Ruriko.
resonated with. I love Ruriko. I think she's really funny. I really did resonate with Sawa, though. Like, I did find her very compelling. So I liked her a lot as a protagonist, and I found her emotional growth very cathartic and enjoyable. Similarly, I really like Shiki because he's a good reflection of Sawa as a similar character, but also I like seeing him also start to get out of his shell a bit with his relationship with Sawa, as we see through the course of the story. And also, like, in the bonus chapter, also seeing, like, he's also has this motivation of, like, wanting to help his mother, too. And I found that very nice and compelling, that the story of the relationship between them. But I also like Mutsuki for some reasons. Like, Mutsuki is someone who is, like, he has, like, kind of this laissez-faire personality, but he's looking out for Shiki, he's looking out for the Mercy family. He really cares, and he's a compassionate person. So I appreciated him a lot. And I guess last to mention, I thought Sora was also just a really consistently hilarious, funny character. Who I really appreciate. She had a lot of great moments.
She brings a lot of levity, that's for sure. I like her, like, just randomly hugging people and whatever. We kind of talked about her earlier, but yeah, she's always got something funny to say.
Yeah, and the fact that Rin's daughter is just so cheerful also brings a smile to my face. It's like, aw, like,
nice.
They have a happy family now. And their kids are so happy. It's just nice.
Yeah, I like Mitsuki a lot because, Yuki, Ayame, and Kakeru were some of my favorites in the original series, and he's got aspects of all three of them. Yeah. But like their comedic aspects, but also they're like we're talking about, like his like caring about people and stuff.
I like Mutsuki as well. I agree. I think Sawa's growth and her attitude is really relatable, and like the way that she kind of reacts to things. And like I said, I think I mentioned this earlier, but she's sort of like self-aware about her own like kind of growth and trying to get out of the situation. So I like that about her, and I think it's interesting in her character. I thought I was really primed to like Hajime, but I feel like it's not that I don't like him, but he's just not that involved in the story, like not as much as I thought he was kind of going to be. Like again, like he spends a lot of time talking to like Mutsuki. After the first kind of like student council times at the like once Shiki's really involved in the story, he's not as involved in the story. It's more like Sawa and Shiki get a lot of like time together, sort of on screen, and they're just there.
I do like how he's such a big brother. Like,
I do like that. Dad friend.
Yeah.
He has good moments where he's kind of gives advice to Sawa, or Sawa like is kind of, again, when Sawa like confesses like her relationship to her mother to him, and like he just says, hey, thanks for letting me know, it's okay for you you shouldn't feel like you should bottle this up and say just because we have good relationships with our parents, you can share these things with us. So I appreciate that. He is a good, mature, reserved type. But yeah, that means he takes more of a backseat in the story compared to Mutsuki. But I also like the moment where he like apologizes to Sawa for like kind of being standoffish towards her at the beginning, where he's like, hey, I'm sorry for judging you or being apprehensive towards you because, I knew you were your mother's daughter. But I know from my own lived experiences, seeing it all my life, how people judge children based on their parents and how wrong and hurtful that can be. I'm sorry I did that to you. So I like that moment too, where he had that, where he, had that moment of self-reflection and apologized to her, recognizing, he had fell into a trap he had seen so many people fall into and be hurtful of before.
Yeah, I also really liked that time that he apologized to her. It was nice. It was kind of a long time coming because he was really sort of standoffish at the beginning of the series. He was kind of like, whatever, I'm just going along with what Mutsuki wanted to do. And it seems like Mutsuki's kind of the architect of this whole thing, like trying to get Sawa involved and get Shiki to meet her and get Shiki more involved with the other kids in the family. So Mitsuki kind of drives a lot of like things that happen in the story. And then they also have all these kind of like events that they just, it feels like they've always done. Like they go to the beach or they go to the vacation house together. They have the picnic. You know, they have like all these kind of events that they can then invite Sawa to. So I liked when they went to the aquarium. I thought that was cute. It was like one of the first times that Sawa and Shiki were able to kind of like connect with each other and learn a little bit more about each other. But I also just kind of like the structure of the panels with the manta rays and stuff. It's cute.
I liked all the little like flashback bonus chapters.
They're really the best ones.
Yeah.
They were both good. The two flashback bonus chapters were really good. I like there's the New Year's one and then the snow one with Mitsuki and
I also sort of tie up like Shiki's sort of little flashback about his mother as kind of with those, even though sort of it's not its own chapter. It just sort of feels like the same
thing. In chapter 13, there's like the huge chunk of it that's like a big flashback about his life with Akito. It's kind of like in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has the similar kind of like the bit with Akito and Shiki with Toru, and the like you don't see them like you don't see their faces, you don't see them up close, kind of like in the other bonus chapter flashbacks.
Yeah, true. It's definitely structured. That part is structured in the same way, and I also enjoyed that sort of background about Akito. Any other things that we want to say, or should we get to listener questions? Any deep thoughts?
I think I got all my thoughts out, at least as I can recall for now. But yeah, maybe the listener questions will bring some more up.
Yeah, maybe.
They will unlock some a secret memory in my brain, just like Sawa slowly uncovered this.
Oh, I was thinking like in Legend of Zelda, where you gotta get the like Breath of the Wild memories, but yes, something like that. I mean, it was kind of the same thing for Sawa. Once she eventually was involved with the family, and then unlocked her memories.
She looked at the picture on her Switch, and
on her Switch,
looked around and went
on her tablet,
and then had a flashback.
Suddenly remembered a very detailed flashback. Yeah, exactly. So I did the same thing as usual. We only have a couple questions this time, but I did one of our listeners asked us like 2 questions, so I split them into separate questions. And there's only 4 questions and 3 of us, so I guess we'll just take turns. So I'll go first. I'll start it off. I nominate myself. So Billy Flaming asked us on Twitter. The biggest question is, can the series stand on its own, or is it really just bona furuba content that won't resonate with non-fans? So that was the first question.
I think it stands on its own as far as it's like comprehensible, like you understand what's happening even if you didn't read Fruits Basket, but I'm not sure how much you would get out of it if you hadn't read Fruits Basket.
I think Sawa's story and character stands on its own, but I think a lot of the series, and most of the supporting cast are the children of characters from the previous series, so I feel like a lot of it is predicated on your enjoyment of Fruits Basket and your desire to want to see like what are the children of these characters I love like, and what are the lives they're living now? How can I learn about them through how their children are? And so I think that a lot of that would go over like someone who hasn't read Fruits Basket's head, and they wouldn't be able to like understand certain characters as well without the knowledge of like what their parents are like or what happened previously in the original series. So I think that a newcomer that would just read this might appreciate Sawa's character just fine, but I think they might be lost or not quite gel with everything going on with the Soma family without like the background of like, oh, this is what these kids are like now after their parents had gone through so much hardship in the original. And that's why it's satisfying to see that most of the children are like happy and thriving and all friends with each other in this series.
Yeah, I think like the characters are all fun, but like there's a lot of them and you don't get a lot of time with each of them because they all get introduced like really quickly. It's just like, hey, this is whoever's kid. And so like most of the like enjoyment you get out of them is by like how they compare and contrast with their parents. And I also think a lot of the themes are kind of reliant on like Fruits Basket, like the whole like repeated like it's a curse concept.
Yeah,
like that's obviously taking a lot of like it relies a lot on the weight of the whole concept of like the bond and the curse from Fruits Basket.
There's so many subtle motifs and nuances also in this that call back to Fruits Basket that I think would be missed if you haven't read it. So I do feel it's best appreciated if you have already read Fruits Basket and are a fan and want to just see what the next generation is like.
I don't think it would resonate with non-fans, but it's not really just bonus content. So I say like Three Musketeers arc and like those things are definitely like just straight up bonus content in my opinion. The series like has its own separate story and it has Sawa who's a separate character. But yeah, I think the enjoyment all comes from having read Fruits Basket and like the true kind of like depth of understanding of all the characters and where they're coming from and the like. I mean, we just have like a flashback to like just Shiki dealing with Ren, and it's kind of that could feel like it's like out of nowhere, for example, because there wasn't any build up to her character included in this series. So yeah, it kind of like really thorough enjoyment. You can understand what's happening, but I think like thorough enjoyment of this would have to come after reading Fruits Basket.
Yeah. It is a compelling story, but you need to have read Fruits Basket to get the most out of it.
It's the characters that are not like they just seem like a bunch of sort of like quirky relatives unless you've read Fruits Basket. I guess you know like I just don't you're not going to get a lot out of the story and like have the background on the Soma family drama that drives like Shiki's story unless you read Fruits Basket for the most part.
Yeah, but if you are a fan of Fruits Basket, I don't think this is a superfluous sequel or spin-off. I think that you'll actually get a lot out of it, and as we discussed, there are a lot of little things in here that were really nice to see as fans of the original, including follow-ups to like characters or character relationships that were left up in the air at the end of the original.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good progression of the story.
Yeah. At first, when I heard that this wasn't going to, because I think it was announced even before the series came out that like none of the old characters would reappear, and it wasn't going to be about them at all. And I was a little bit disappointed that they wouldn't even like be in it. Like it's nice that like Hinata and like Momo are there. But yeah, I don't feel like you're missing out on a lot by not having them there. Like we still got to learn like a good amount of stuff. It's just all delivered in sort of a convoluted way because the characters are talking about their parents or whatever. So you still get a lot of information about what happened to the characters that that we knew and loved in Fruits Basket, which is nice. Lum, would you like to ask the next question if nobody has any other things to say about the first question?
So this is another question from Billy Flaming, and they ask, I'm also curious about our thoughts on Akito's Drop the Sequel, which I think we also mentioned a lot through this podcast, but I think that it was bittersweet, but it was nice to see how Akito is choosing to atone in the present, and it was very sweet to see the relationship she had with Shiki, and that she was like a caring and loving mother to him, to the point where he is feeling very protective of her and wants to help her.
Yeah, I think I kind of like where Akito's wound up in this sequel. Like she's still trying to like do her meet her responsibilities as the head of the family and like look out for the others, even if that means clashing with the more unpleasant like old guard of the family. And she's making sure her kid has a chance to have a good relationship with the rest of his family, even if she's stepped back from it to avoid making everyone else uncomfortable. But at the same time, we see she has a good strong relationship with Shigure and their son Shiki, and she's still friends with Toru and seems to be implied to be friends with Hana still.
Because their children know each other, so they must be friends, obviously. And they go to the same school and whatnot. Yeah, I said this earlier, I'm just kind of bummed that things are still bad for Akito. Like, it seems like her life is really hard. It seems like, on the other hand, though, it seems like she's choosing to do things that I think like make sense for the gravity of the pain that she caused to other people. Like she purposely removes herself from the family gatherings, but she's still trying to like kind of work behind the scenes to make sure things are okay for them and stuff like that by dealing with the family like council or whatever they called it in the series and that kind of stuff, dealing with family business. And it's good that she has a good relationship with Shigure and Shiki. I know everyone knows how I feel about Akito and Shigure's relationship, but whatever. Now they seem to be doing fine with Shiki. So Shiki seems fine. He doesn't seem messed up or anything.
Yeah.
So I guess if that's anything to go by, it seems like her life is going okay. She's like okay with it and accepted. Maybe she won't be a part of the family or whatever anymore, but a part of, you know, hanging out with them other than Toru. And she does get to spend time with Toru. She's still friends with Toru, so that's good. So she has support from people who aren't in the Soma family, which is also good. Well, I guess Toru is in the Soma family now, but not a old guard Soma for sure, and not one of the
and they live far away from it.
They live in the countryside. So. Yeah, exactly. A good place to get away from everything. So that's good. But that's kind of like overall kind of bummed. But it's like, well, Akito seems to be okay with the situation, so I guess that's good. Kayla, would you like to ask the next question?
This one is from Meows900 on Twitter. And they ask, is it worth reading after finishing the series? I'm curious about it, but in a more like rental type way.
I mean, I think it's worth reading. We discussed it.
Yeah.
It was discussable.
We got a lot of discussion out of it,
yeah.
I think.
I pre-screened the series for discussion because... I think our listeners had asked a couple of times if we were going to read this or talk about Three Musketeers, and I was like, absolutely not for Three Musketeers because I don't think it's really like real content. Like it's funny, but it's not
not much to really say.
Yeah, it's like some funny things happened.
Like gags and goofs.
Yeah,
you know, it's fun.
It's fun to read. I've read them. I have them, and I mean, so I pre-screened this to see if there would be a significant amount of content to discuss, and I felt like there was enough there, and obviously now we're talking about it, so I think it's worth reading. It might be worth reading to you in a rental type way. I don't have the physical books for this, if that, other than for them being difficult to get right now, which we were talking about before we started recording. But like I'm not bothered that I don't have, you know, like the nice yen press edition of this, I guess, if that kind of makes sense. That's kind of like how I feel about what it's bringing to my life. It's not taking up space on my bookshelf. I haven't given it space on my bookshelf, but I have read it. Does that make sense?
I think it's worth. I think it's worth reading if you are a fan of Fruits Basket and it's relatively easy for you to get a hold of. But I wouldn't be like sobbing in the corner if you can't read it. Like
it's not like an essential part.
It's not vital to your Fruits Basket experience.
I was just trying to think if there's something that's like comparable. Like it's not like, you know, like if you were a really big Harry Potter fan, you hadn't read the last book or something.
Yeah, I think this is better than The Cursed Child.
I haven't read The Cursed Child, but I feel like there you go. That's like the level
maybe
of it's like,
or like Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It's like
yeah.
It was an okay movie. I'm glad I saw it, but I wouldn't put it out of my.
I've seen them. I enjoy watching them, but like I don't even remember what happens for the most part. Like that's kind of like it's like a nice thing to go to the theater and hear the explosions in the surround sound, and then you're like, well, that was fun, and then you know what I mean. But I don't like own them. All the Magical Beasts movies.
I think another has substance to it for sure.
Yeah.
I would say like in the same way the relationship between most like parent sequence series are.
Yeah.
Like if you're satisfied with the parent, like the sequel is often like a fun bonus, especially if it's a next gen sequel. So like, you know, it's comparable to like the Naruto Boruto divide. Like, you know, if you like Naruto and you want to see what the kids are like, you'd read Boruto, and that's kind of the same with this. With Fruits Basket and other, I think.
Yeah, it's you're not. I don't think you're missing out on a lot. But if you liked Fruits Basket, I would recommend reading it, and it's not like it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. Like just rent it from the like I don't know my library,
and it's only 13 chapters, so it's not like a huge
it's not
time
a big
sink.
investment of time.
Yeah.
It's not like when people are trying to convince you to read like I don't know JoJo's Bizarre Adventure or something, and there's like thousands of chapters, and you're like I refuse.
It took me like 2 nights of reading before bed to
I think it took
the whole
me
thing. So.
a couple days, a couple nights to pre-screen it. So, yeah.
I think it's definitely one of the. It's a satisfying sequel series, I think. So if you're a fan, I think it's worth checking out. And libraries are your friend if you don't want to necessarily buy it.
Curious about it in a rental type way. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So our last question comes from Anon42069, who says that they didn't send us questions for our FMA episode, which I totally forgot. I didn't realize, but that's okay. School does suck. That is true. Anon42069 question is, if Soma kids had to travel back in time and see how their parents lived with the curse, how horrified would they be?
I think they'd all be pretty
horrified.
Extremely.
They all love their parents, so they'd be so distraught and upset and angry to see them mistreated and unhappy.
Yeah. Maybe if it was like the very end of the series, it would be okay. But if it was like the very beginning of Fruits Basket, it would not be okay, for sure.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, and then they would all understand, like, they don't know what Akito like really did. Like, they didn't experience it, right? Like, they
I was
would
gonna say, I think
have a different
Shiki would be
perspective
really,
of Akito.
really, really troubled.
Yeah, I mean, Akito stabbed someone, so like, and also just Akito is so desperate as well.
Oh, yeah, I never
Like,
thought
she's a
about it. We don't have
completely
any
different
like Uo and Kareno descendants in Fruits Basket.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting
Totally forgot
that we did. They
did kind of like
touch upon
peace out though. So
Kareno like lives somewhere far away, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he would want to be involved in, you know, I don't know, in the family.
Yeah. It seems that he did like leave the family almost entirely.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
He was always pretty isolated from them anyway.
That's true. He was isolated from the other Junichi. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sad. Karina's sad. That's what I would have said.
It's a sad bird.
But they would definitely be horrified because also none of their parents like got along, like, for the most part.
Yeah.
It took a lot of time for them to like even be okay with being sort of friends, you know. Or they had like kind of could have been like jealous relationships or whatever, like the ones that had better relationship with their parents or whatever. Like there's a lot of drama that I think, like, the parents told their kids in this generation about the curse and like about some of the things that happened, and, you know, like Haru said that Ren is crazy and that Ren, you know, like did all these horrible things too, and that Akito really traumatized the family, and so they kind of know this stuff, but they didn't experience it firsthand like their parents did. So I'm sure they would be horrified for sure. How horrified? I don't know if you could put can we put a number on it?
I think Shiki would be like the most
Definitely.
horrified to see Akito in her past. Yeah.
And Akito definitely had like sort of the biggest change of behavior, and like doesn't seem to be so, like, you know, now has support from like Shigure and Toru, and so isn't so alone.
Yeah.
I feel like we were pretty sympathetic toward Akito at the end of the series, like,
Absolutely.
so Shiki's already kind of sad about what's happening now. I feel like it would be so much worse.
Yeah.
Maybe Hajime would be like, stop apologizing all the time to Toru. And don't live by this danger cliff. He's such a like dad friend. He'd be like, why are you in a tent by yourself?
Yeah. And I think he'd be annoyed at some of Kyo's kind of like tsundere-ness.
His attitude, yeah. Scariness, yeah. I feel like, get over yourself. It's funny. But what about his pain? What about all his pain? I would say 10 out of 10 on the horrified scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a thing existed. Well, we don't have any other questions, so any last things that we want to say about Fruits Basket and Other? This is your last chance on this podcast, at least. You can say whatever you want on your blog, but
I think it was okay.
it was a pretty good series. I was happy about the things that we learned about our friends from Fruits Basket, and I liked Sawa, and I liked Shiki, and I liked their budding relationship, and I liked how Sawa was able to grow close to friends and, become a little more self-confident and start kind of figuring out her situation with her mom.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I first read through the entirety of it properly earlier this year, and revisiting again, I felt even more strongly about it. Like, I really connected with Sawa. I could relate and empathize very much with, how she was thinking about herself and how self-deprecating she was at the beginning, and also her family situation with her mother. I thought it was very sweet to touch in with the next generation of Soma kids and see like that they all have very healthy and supportive relationships with one another. And I just found it very touching to see like Sawa kind of being able to grow to someone more confident in herself and form connections with other people and have like a support network to help her. Even though like her family circumstances are still tough. And I thought the bonus chapter with Shiki was also very compelling, and it was nice to learn about like what was going on with the kids. Of course, we touched on the bonus chapter. It's so nice to learn about like what's going on with the characters who knew and love with the original series and see how they've kind of grown and what they're like as parents. And yeah, I just think it's a very sweet extension of Fruits Basket, and emotionally, I found it very cathartic and satisfying. I did tear up several times some moments in it. So to me, I put it on the same level as the original series. Obviously, it doesn't stand alone, completely detached from it, but I do enjoy it as much as I do the original as a story. And I really like these characters a lot. And if Takaya continues to explore them more, I certainly would enjoy to see more.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't know if she will, but that would be nice.
In the meantime, there's plenty of other Takaya series that I still want to get around to finally catch up on.
Yes.
Like, I own like Phantom Dream and Tsubasa, and then I actually recently got Lizzalote and Twinkle Stars from the library because I wanted to read through them, because I'm like, I'm kind of in a big Takaya mood, because I'm also been rereading Fruits Basket for the original for a potential other podcast too. So yeah, I'm a big Takaya kick right now.
Yeah, I saw Twinkle Star get recommended like after I like bought the Fruits Basket and other books on Kindle, and I was like, what now?
I started reading Scanlation and Twinkle Stars a long time ago, but I think it was the same situation as like kind of what you were describing with this series, Lum, where the Scanlation like didn't do a great job of communicating what was happening, so I couldn't really get into it. But maybe I feel like we're really dissing Scanlations, but maybe the like official translation is a little more clear, so maybe it'd be easier to get into. But it seemed cute at the beginning. And some for other series. I think my sister brought me the first volume of Tsubasa, so that would I feel like I should probably read that. Yeah. Takaya. Anyway.
I think I looked at Tsubasa once, but it was kind of hard to go back to early Takaya art style after.
It's pretty different than her
the evolution, yeah.
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 And like Tsubasa and Phantom Dream are also more like kind of action series, so they're kind of a world apart from like Fruits Basket also in terms of tone. So yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, it is as early work. It also is like more rougher stuff. Like Lizzalote looks a lot similar to later Fruits Basket, Fruits Basket and others. Same with Twinkle Stars.
Yeah, Twinkle Stars came out I think right after Fruits Basket.
Yeah,
right after.
And then she was doing Lizzalote. She started that before doing another, and then she was working on both at the same time for a while, but then she put Lizzalote on hold to finish another. And then I don't know. She said she'll go back to it, but I don't know. I don't think she has yet. So maybe in the future, though.
Wikipedia still says it's an indefinite hiatus. So
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if she's got anything active right now. I think she was kind of involved in the Fruits Basket anime, like doing. Yeah. She was somewhat involved in the production of that, but yeah, I don't know if she has any active series right now. But anyway, we've got a whole wealth of Takaya series to read until then. until whatever her next thing is. Any last thoughts on another, or have we done our due diligence in discussing it?
It was another good time. Another
Thanks
good
so much
podcast.
for joining us. Thanks for coming back to talk to us.
It was a pleasure. No,
That's
always
good.
a pleasure.
We've been together for quite a few hours now, so I'm glad that you enjoyed it. On that note, we're still working on our Zelda thing that we've talked about before. That's still coming. Don't fret. But we don't have any definite plans. We're also in an indefinite hiatus, not unlike Zakaya. Now that I think about it.
Ours probably won't last 8 years, though.
I don't think it'll last 8 years. Maybe I'm thinking like a month or two. I hope that by at least early 2022 we get going anyway. But that's between me and myself at this point, I guess. Anyway, so we're still working on our things. But thank you all for listening and joining us for this. Thanks, Lum, for joining us and talking about another. We had a great time talking it up about Sawa and Shiki and all our favorite friends from New Fruits Basket, Fruits Basket Another, and Old Fruits Basket.
Just call them that from now on.
Yeah,
Old
there's
Fruits Basket and New Fruits
Furuba
Basket.
1 and Furuba 2, right? Like Ayame and Ayame 2. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you around.
Bye-bye.
Sayonara.
I personally haven't read Urusei Yatsura. Maybe I should. Maybe that would be a good thing to do and listen to. Your
Very different series from Fruits Basket. Very, very lighthearted, very gag focused. Not a whole lot of deep personal drama.
Yeah, it's one of those series I've always been aware of, but never really read or watched.
Yeah, I mean, as you can't tell by my username, I'm a big fan of Rumiko Takashi's work.
Oh, by the way, that's also
Cover
going to
you
happen a
with
lot.
stamp
Although I
towel.
think you know that because we recorded before. So
Oh yeah, and I listened to the show. Like, so it was fun to hear him squeaking.
I'm glad that
So he's
people-
got something to say.
he's very opinionated about manga.
Bowie just went back in his cage and shut the door behind him.
Oh, he
So
doesn't
you know.
want you in there. He's got to keep the riffraff out.
Oh man.
Later, he's probably be like, "Help! I'm trapped," and I'm like, "You closed the door yourself."
You did this to yourself. Any other
Shut
things?
you out until he needs you to let him in.
Yes, exactly.